All right, welcome everyone. We have a very special not a contest. We're going to give away something at the end of the show. Don't worry. We have a very special podcast with Mitch Garber, who's a good friend of mine, known him for many years. And I think you guys are going to really get some insight into the gaming industry. He has been around for a long time. So Mitch, before we dive in, let me just say welcome and thank you for taking the time today.
Thanks. I mean, I'm just happy to catch up with you too, Jeff. So, everyone's in sort of extraordinary circumstances, doing things in a different way than we've ever done them before. It actually fits into your lifestyle quite well, but for most people, this is pretty dramatic. So we'll probably talk about that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely want to cover that situation about COVID and how it impacts everyday life. You're in a ton of business stuff. We'll talk about that. A lot of industries that gaming, NHL team, you're a minority owner in as well, and sports in particular, of course. As a world, we see it just stop completely. So we'll definitely cover all that. But Mitch, why don't you just give a little bit of background? This is a poker centric kind of podcast in general, but we do cover other things. And so you're not a professional poker player. You've been in the industry in poker and gaming a long time. But tell us a little bit about yourself and just sort of how your career, I guess, if you would just kind of dive back.
And the way I would cover the poker is that it's almost like I've had every position at an airline, and I've been the CEO and chairman of an airline, but I don't know how to fly a plane, but I understand everything about, aviation and aeronautics. And so when we get to, we'll talk a lot about poker because it's made up a pretty important part of my business life. And then it became a pretty big part of my social life, even though I don't play very much. The people I surround myself with, a lot of them are very involved with poker, and we'll talk about why that happened. Awesome. But, basically, I'm a 55-year-old, born and bred in Montreal. I went to McGill University. Then I went to law school at the University of Ottawa. I practiced for about 9 years. And my godfather, who had he still has a law firm, allowed me to start a gaming practice in the early 90s, 92, 93, where we were representing the casinos and collecting bad marker debt from gamblers that were from Canada that had gone to Atlantic City or Vegas and had bounced their checks or had used their line and then not paid the casino. And then we figured out that we could get a judgment from a Canadian judge to enforce those debts as being legal debts. There was a thought before that they weren't. And so that's how I started in the gaming industry, and then representing gaming equipment manufacturers like IGT and others that were selling slot machines into new casinos that were being built. So if you go back to sort of the 80s, there was only casinos in Atlantic City and Vegas. Right. And now if you look, obviously today, almost every state has, a casino either on a native reserve or in the city itself. And so as that was permeating, companies like IGT and other slot manufacturers needed to find their way into the casinos, needed lawyers, needed business people. And so I did quite a bit of that. And one thing sort of led to another. The mid-90s brought the internet. And one day in 1996, I was reading an article in International Gaming and Wagering Business Magazine by Roxy Roxborough, who remains a friend of mine to this day. Okay. And he wrote about a sports book in Austria called Intertops. And I thought it was really interesting that, this guy in Salzburg was on the internet and was offering sports betting on the internet. And so I called him and I started speaking to him and telling him, who I was. And he told me his biggest problem was transaction processing, getting credit card payments on the net. People were afraid to put their credit card on the net, 1996, 97, right? And so two friends of mine owned a big ISP. There were ISPs back then. And they were interested in starting this business of processing credit card transactions. So I can fast forward just for a second because that company today is worth about $13 billion. Wow. That first credit card processing was done in 1997. I don't own any shares. I sold my shares in 2006. Mm-hmm. But that company has been built and rebuilt by a really good friend of mine named Joel Leonoff, who was the co-founder with me back in sort of 97. And he's done an amazing job. So that's how I got into the internet side of gaming. And I left my law practice in 1999. I went over to be the executive vice president of that public company that was doing the transaction processing for much more than gaming, but for gaming as well. And in 2003, 2004, we merged with a NASDAQ company. Company had a lot of cash. And they helped us build our business to become a pretty big business, a multi-billion-dollar business. And then in 2006, I got a call from Party Poker. or from a headhunter from Party Poker.
Okay.
And I was offered this position to be the CEO of Party Poker and to move my family to Europe and primarily to Gibraltar.
Was this Party Poker or Party Gaming? Or this was
Party Gaming. So Party Gaming, yeah. So Party Gaming at that time, right? So 2006, Party Gaming. This is April 2006. I moved to Europe. Just put the time frame in your mind. I moved to Europe in April 2006. The market cap of Party Gaming is $10 billion. The EBITDA is somewhere in the area of 700 million. Big company.
Okay.
Built by Ruth Parasol and her husband Russ De Leon and a couple of guys from India.
Did you know them? That because when did just give a reference on Party Poker? When did that actually go turn on the lights and the first hands were dealt? So
I don't remember the first year of the first hand, but the IPO was in 2005.
Okay.
And I ended up there in 2006 after the IPO.
Okay.
And they were massive. I mean, they owned online poker. At the time there was like barely a PokerStars. And
I remember being in college, and when they turned the UIGEA, it went down. That was basically because they were publicly traded, right? And that's when Stars and Full Tilt and these companies sort of just took off because Party moved out of the area.
And that's a huge part of my story. So 2006, I moved down there. Really great company. We've got I think 4,000 employees. Half of them are way more than half of them are in India, in Hyderabad, India. And so 4 months into my tenure as CEO of the company, UIGEA passes, and everything turns upside down. The 10 billion becomes 2 billion. The 700 million of EBITDA becomes 200 million of EBITDA. And big decisions have to be made. Public company, do you exit? Do you stay in? How enforceable do you think this U.S. law is since you're sitting, in Gibraltar? And we hired the best lawyers in America, and the board came to a unanimous decision that what we needed to do as a public company was we needed to turn off the U.S. Business, and we did. And it's a move that I certainly don't regret to this day. And I felt at the time that the U.S. government was taking an unreasonable position, and I feel today even more so that they took an unreasonable position. And
how big, give us a little in the war room there. Give us a little insight. Was it just like obviously everyone was unanimous, like this is the only play? Was it like no, let's think about this, because obviously it's big money. You're talking about like those number and drops. It's a huge deal. So was there any kind of back and forth, or was it just like, well, there's no option?
I think there was no option. So I guess the only option, which never was put on the table, would have been if someone or some group would have come forward and said, let's take the company private, make a tender offer to the public shareholders, take the company private, and keep the U.S. business on and run it like PokerStars, like Full Tilt, like a number of others. And at that time, basically what was happening, if you want to talk about the war room, the calls were coming to me from Gigi Levy, the CEO of 888, from More Wiser, and even Teddy Segui at Playtika. What are you doing? And I told them what I was doing, and we all did the same thing on the same day. So there were no public companies that remained online taking U.S. businesses. So we were the biggest. So maybe you can say that in some way that I led that, but it's not really true. There wasn't a debate between 888, Playtika, ourselves. No debate was really had. The U.S. law enforcement is very powerful, and there are very few public companies that want to end up on the wrong side of the DOJ. And so I think it was a public-private. It was really a public-private discussion. What's the fiduciary duty here? What do the lawyers tell you to do? What's your liability if you don't listen to the lawyers? So those are the kinds of things that public companies have to think about, and private companies can think less about. So I don't think less of Mark Scheinberg for doing what he did, and understanding the position that he was in at the time. Right.
Yeah, that's because this is, when you think of this major dates in poker history, this is obviously right there with it, and then of course you fast forward to the
Black Friday.
April, right? Basically, actually today, right, or the 15th of 2011. So nine years ago. Those are major dates, because then that ultimately did that position Party Poker in a better way now to come back like to the U.S. and sort of fast forwarding. So I just want to hear about your story really, but I mean, I cover that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly Party Poker is seen as a really compliant company. Obviously, they've done M&A with BWin since then. A lot's changed. I left in 2008. It's 2020. I've been gone for 12 years. Yeah. So for people who are watching that have known me for all that time, they'll probably scratch their heads in disbelief that we're 12 years off from me leaving and 14 years off from the UIGEA bill in 2006. It's a long way.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising that this isn't sorted out in the U.S. You would think by now. Like you think, you hear about California being a key state. Now you see Michigan pass, Pennsylvania pass. There's a handful of states now. It looks like there's a chance that maybe it gets going, but still, it just seems so slow. And again, the COVID-19 and this type of thing with casinos, which is something I'm really curious on your position or what you feel is going to happen, because in my mind, that's almost like maybe this could spark something, or maybe get casinos, because casinos can't stay dormant forever, right? I mean, these are major companies, and so I do want to touch on that so we don't forget that later. But
we won't forget it. Don't worry. I have a lot of insight into that. But
it's a major deal. But yeah, so now you're at Party Poker. You're in this amazing company that's thriving, and gaming's and this happens. So then what happens for you? What is, after you make that decision and you guys pull out from being the US, then what happens?
So look, I kept running the company for, almost another 2 years. It was difficult, clearly. You have to let a lot of people go. You have to reposition yourself, and watch your liquidity dissipate. So the magic of online poker is liquidity.
Yeah.
And when you lose 70% of your liquidity overnight, what was great about Party Poker at the time, which I could say about Poker Stars right after that time, is that the Swedes were playing with the Americans, were playing with the Japanese, all times of day. You'd wake up at 3 a.m. LA time, you'd be playing, in a room with the Finns or whatever. And in fact, people would be waiting for the Swedes, or the Swedes would be waiting for the Canadians. Right. There was like almost like a geographic shark fish tank, or even a time of day shark fish tank. It was really complex, and well understood by a lot of players. And so all of a sudden you lose all that liquidity. In about March of 2008, I met the owners of Caesars, the two founding partners of TPG and Apollo. And I talked about moving back to North America, and they talked about building a new subsidiary of Caesars. And what they wanted me to build was a readiness for online poker being legalized in the United States, and we would own the World Series of Poker. So the subsidiary that I would own part of would buy the World Series of Poker from Caesars, and Caesars would own part of it, and we'd own another part of it. And in a separate subsidiary called Caesars Interactive, we would build out a digital strategy, and we would build out the capacity to have WSOP ready for legalized U.S. online poker, while we still ran the actual WSOP, which Ty Stewart runs to this day.
Yep.
And that sounded, super exciting. And to be honest, I thought I wouldn't even make any money. I was just happy to be, at the top of a subsidiary of Caesars. I had made it to Vegas. I had just done quite well financially at Party. I was moving back to Canada. I was able to live in Montreal and sort of commute to Vegas. And so I had everything that I wanted. I was dealing with the founders of TPG and Apollo, two amazing, financial geniuses, Mark Rowan and David Bonderman. And so I did that. And when I went to WSOP, to Caesars, I inherited more than two, but I inherited two amazing guys. One's Craig Abrams and one's Ty Stewart. And so Ty runs the World Series, and I never pretended to run the World Series, and I never jumped in front of the TV camera, ahead of Ty or what have you. He often pushed me out there, but Ty really has run the World Series of Poker. Jack's done a terrific job. I can name lots of people. Early on, Daniel Vogel.
Shout out to Vogel. Hope he's doing well.
Well, I have a good Vogel story too.
Okay.
So I have good stories about everybody. So I go over there in around the end of 2008, and we formed a subsidiary in May of 2009. This is important because in around December 2010, I have a meeting of our management team, and I remember it like it was yesterday, because I have still on a sheet of paper, a big sheet of paper, we drew a diagram, and it's been framed for me as a gift when I left Party. And what it said on this big diagram was, and what I said at the time was, I don't see any way for you guys and women to become wealthy running this subsidiary. And so unless we could think of a way that I can create wealth for you and we can create wealth for you, which was not my top priority at the time for myself, I would see that you guys would be searching other opportunities. And so we sat around the table and we thought about what we could do, and we saw Zynga Poker. And we said, okay, this is interesting. Does it make any money? And we, at the time, we couldn't figure out if it made any money, so we didn't know. We saw Farmville, we saw Zynga Poker, Angry Birds, like that was what was happening in 2010. Again, that's 10 years ago.
Right.
So we decide, okay, you know what? We own the World Series of Poker. Anyone who has virtual poker is got to be interested in our brand.
Mm-hmm.
So we call Zynga, and they make us an offer that's sort of very arrogant from the Zynga guys. But they agree, but they agree to meet us nonetheless. So, so we meet them, and there's nothing to be done there. And so, if I have only had one brainstorm in my entire life, it was, let's go see if there's anything in Israel and that we could buy. And a good friend of mine, Gigi Levy, I mentioned him earlier, was the CEO of 888 at the time. He asked me if I had heard of this company, Playtika, and I hadn't heard of them, and I forgot about it only because I almost got confused. I was like, Playtika. I wasn't paying attention, which I should have been paying attention. Yeah. A month later, he calls me and he says, have you contacted them? I said, no, I didn't contact them. Remind me again. He goes, yeah, well, they're making like 7 million of EBITDA right now, and you should talk to them. So I fly to Israel, I meet them, I fall in love, and by the time we negotiate a deal to buy them, they're making 10 million of EBITDA. And they're just doing Slotomania on Facebook. There is no mobile games at the time. Okay. And we tell them, hey, listen, we'll build WSOP Poker. We'll professionalize your business. We know how to professionalize companies. We know how to make you a better, bigger company. We know how to use the brands of Caesars and World Series of Poker. If we want to be able to sell this business one day, we know exactly how to prepare the business to be sold and to find the buyers and to create the process or to take it public. This is what we know that you don't know. And what you know that we don't know is how to build a business.
Right.
And so we bought the business in 2011 for $100 million, 10 times EBITDA. We paid for it.
I know this. This is a pretty incredible story, and I know kind of it ties in around that time of Burning Man, which we have to cover as well. But when you make this $100 million deal, how about in your head? Are you just so sure that this is like a fantastic play, or is this tough to get the companies aligned, or were you guys just like, no, let's do it, this is great, or were you like, this is a pretty big splurge, like I don't know?
Yeah, so I went to the board of Caesars and I explained to them that we're going to spend $100 million on a business that has no real source of revenue from the perspective that the people playing the games are buying virtual coins to advance in the game or to see features that you can't see without buying the coins, but they can't win anything and they can't cash out and they can't buy anything that you could deliver to their home. Mm-hmm. And I made the analogy in the board meeting of Pac-Man, because people were saying, well, why would anyone do this? I go, well, why did anyone play Pac-Man and then put another quarter in the machine to continue the game at the level they were on? It's entertainment. And Pac-Man became pretty successful. So the Pac-Man analogy was there. Also, of course, we had the Zynga and Farmville analogy as well, that these guys are growing. They've got huge traffic. So the board said, yeah, go ahead, spend $100 million. Now, if you ask me, did I think that it would turn into what it turned into? I could tell you definitely not. And I could even tell you why. So if I thought that this $100 million was going to turn into 4.4 billion 4 years later, 5 years later, I would have gone to the board of Caesars and said, hey, you know what? By the way, we're paying $100 million. Management would like to put in $5 million. We'll pay 5, you pay 95. Let us own 5% of it. It'll give management a great. So I didn't do that, right? And I could name you many times in my career that I didn't do that. That if I would have done that, I could have billions of dollars. But to be honest, so I didn't do it. And after we bought them, we bought another company called House of Fun. That company was making 8 million of EBITDA. So again, we could have gone to the Caesars board and said, hey guys, we'll put in 5 million and you put in the other, we paid 85. You put in the other 80.
When you say we, you mean as in yourself and the manager?
Me, Craig, Ty, Scott Wilson, John Davidman, Avner Sorry, a whole bunch of guys, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Who had money and who were entrepreneurial, obviously not entrepreneurial enough. And so we took our stock options and we took our salaries and bonuses, and we owned equity in Caesars Interactive. But what I'm saying is we could have dipped in again and again each time we bought another company.
Okay.
And so anyway, so the company becomes a $4.5 billion company. I'm going to jump quickly. We sell it to the Chinese in 2016 to a consortium of a company called Giant Interactive and Jack Ma's personal family office. And what I'm particularly proud of is two things. Number one, obviously buying a business for 100 million and selling it for 4.4 billion, changed my life and the lives of many people. It saved Caesars from its bankruptcy, restructuring, and that's been written about in a lot of newspapers, and I'm quite proud of that. But I'm more proud, actually, that the guys that we bought are my best friends. I believe the company today is worth about 12 billion. So there's 8 billion left on, or 7 billion left on the table by, a guy like me. But I think we did a great deal. I think we did the right deal. I think we sold at the right time for us. Robert Antical, who's the founder and CEO of that business today, is doing more than 700 million of EBITDA.
Wow. Okay,
so Slotomania, House of Fun, WSOP, they still own the brand rights for it. And so that's so each piece of that story has a poker element to it. It's either the party poker element, it's the Zynga poker element, it's the lack of legislation in the US to legalize poker that forced us to go to Israel and buy some social game to give us a business so that people could make money. And so that's why there's almost nothing you can ask me that since you've known me, that doesn't have some poker element in and around it, but has very little to do with me playing poker.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I remember this very vividly. We were in Burning Man. I think was it 2016 then?
Yeah, 2016.
And you were there, and you were basically, Anne Marie, you guys were there. We were hanging out, wearing our Silver Surfer costumes, running around, and you were saying, "Man, this is a crazy sweat because this deal is on the table, but there's been times, right? These kind of this isn't just like this is a big transaction, $1 billion.
No, that wasn't even the sweat. The sweat, there was no phones at the time at Burning Man. Right. Now you could use your phone at Burning Man.
Yeah, exactly. That added another level of it. And it's just like those kind of deals can fall through last second. Guys are on the table, people get cold feet until it's signed and the money shipped. It's like those deals fall through. There's been mega deals that don't happen in the midnight hour. So I remember literally you sort of like, it looks good, things are ready to go, but it wasn't a locked deal. So yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest in gaming in history, or at the time. Was it the biggest or one of them? I mean, that's a huge deal, or one of the big.
It's a huge deal. I mean, there are other deals. I mean, obviously the PokerStars deal was a huge deal, amazing deal. There's a few companies that have become really big, but this was a big deal for Israel, the big deal for me and my management team personally. Guys' lives were changed forever.
Right.
A bunch of guys mentions lives are changed. I get a text from Ty Stewart. I shouldn't say this, but I'm saying it. It's Easter Sunday.
All friends, yeah.
I know. So I get a text from Ty every year. I mean, I speak to him more than once a year, but I get a text from Ty on Easter Sunday. So when is that? Like yesterday, 2 days ago? Okay.
2 days ago, yeah.
So I get a text from him. It's a picture of his home in Oregon and a note saying, "You changed my life forever. I'll never be able to, to not thank you." And it's not me. I mean, it's a team. It's a lot. Yeah. It's angel dust. All kinds of great things happen. But just to tell you, nothing feels better. Almost nothing feels better than when something like that happens. Craig Abrams building a beautiful home. Guys giving money to charity that they never would have thought they'd be able to afford to give to charity. So that's they're about what's the spin-off effect of what happened.
For sure. Well, no, I mean it's pretty cool, and to see you just sort of come from you went to law school, a lawyer, and then did you always have a love of games and like what was your experience with gaming? Why do you think you headed into poker / gaming from you mentioned when you first got started, but was there when you grew up, were you into games and poker at all or anything like what?
It's funny because when I was 18 and a half, so that's 1982.
We share the same birthday. Shout out to
September 5th. Shout out to September 5th. Exactly.
I give a little love there. So okay. So 18 and a half.
1982, the gambling age in New Jersey is 18. In 83, it goes to 21.
Interesting.
So my friend Larry Schneider and I, shout out to Larry Schneider.
Larry, all right.
Borrow my father's car. We drive 9 hours to Atlantic City.
Wow.
We get into the casino, the Playboy Casino. Shout out to Playboy. Rest in peace.
Yeah, I've never seen that one there.
You're too young. You don't know any of this. You know, they had every casino that was there at the time you barely ever heard of. So
okay.
We go to the Playboy Casino. It's on different levels. And in the first hour, we lose all of our money. Now, we have no money. We're 18 and a half years old. We have no money. We have an SO credit card, which is like Exxon here in Canada. I have an SO credit card. Thank God for that. Okay. We have no money. So we sleep in the car for a night. Maybe we don't have no money, but like $20. We take the $20. We think we win it all back. Okay. Next night comes. We sleep 2 nights in the car. We're at zero. We drive back 9 hours. On the way back from Atlantic City, we had gambled less than an hour to lose all our money. So it's a 9-hour drive each way. Pull up to a gas station with the SO card, fill up the tank with gas. I take off my jacket. I lock my father's keys in the trunk of the car. I get the gas station attendant. Okay, I can't give him any money because I have no money to drill a hole in the trunk of the car of my dad. Okay, my dad's got like a brand new car. Drills a hole in the lock of the trunk, big hole, pops it open, gives me a cord to keep it closed. I get the keys out of the car, obviously. So I have an early experience with being attracted to gaming, but I was young. You know, my late dad, took his life when I was 2 weeks away from graduating law school. My godfather and my dad used to take us to the harness racetrack and tell my stepsister, you know, who was like, let's say I was 15, she was like 7, that they were going to the zoo, and they would put her down by the fence, and she thought she was at the zoo seeing the horses at the zoo.
No,
at the track betting the racing. So so I understood gaming from a pretty young age.
Wow. Well, it is fascinating. I mean, again, knowing you for some time with Antonio, like you said, you have a lot of connections in poker, a lot of people you know. Fast forward a bit on, so these deals get done, Playtika gets sold, and I mean, I want to cover some of your other businesses and ventures you're in, but now you're the chairman of Cirque du Soleil. Tell me a little bit about the transition from actually, well, I guess Playtika, when you left, is that what you left Caesars, 2 years ago now? Or
I left in 2000. I stayed for an extra year to help them finish the parent with the restructuring. At the time, I had under me 6 casinos that were very healthy, Planet Hollywood, Bally's, Harrah's. And then I left in 2017. Mm-hmm. And I had sold all my stock, and everything was good. I was super happy to leave and left all good friends, really good terms. I've always left everywhere on good terms. So, so I left in 2017. When I went to Caesars in 2008, I told David Bonderman and Mark Rowan, I didn't tell them, I asked them that when I'm done here, my dream is to invest alongside you and to be involved in businesses and companies that you're involved with. And I think they were just being polite by saying, yeah. But as it turns out, that has become the case. I'm a partner in so many investments with David Bonderman, including the NHL team. We'll talk about that in a minute. And with Mark Rowan, we do a lot of investments in Israel, and just have an amazing friendship. And these are 2 mentors to me. I think they're 2 of the smartest guys in private equity and 2 of the best people that I know. So that's worked out really, really well. Gary Loveman was the chairman of the company that at Caesars, and he was a fantastic chairman and a great cheerleader and sponsor of mine and Craig's and Ty's. He helped me a lot. So it was great. It was really, really great.
And so you live in, well, actually before I want to dip into a bit of the family life. You, Anne-Marie, who, my wife and I, we know very well now, your family. We actually saw, it was not long ago, we were in Montreal. We had dinner. It was nice to catch up, and we've Burning Man a couple of years. We've gone together during around our birthday time. We've been in the same camp, so we've had some good times. And tell me a bit about family life and how being a businessman. You're not just a businessman. You're CEO of major companies. Very, very. I don't want to say strenuous, but it's at pressure situations. You have 2 boys, Dylan and Ryan. How about the early family life with this stuff? Because I'm a new dad. There's a lot of people out there with new fathers, and tell me a little bit about how you met Anne-Marie, and then how being in business, juggling family a little bit. Give me a little bit of advice.
Okay, my story of meeting my wife isn't as good as yours, but it's pretty good.
Listen, it's all energy. It's all great, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all energy. So as I said, my father died 2 weeks before I graduated law school, and I was in law school at the University of Ottawa, and they have a policy in Canada at the time that you had to go to bar school in the same province that you went to law school. And but my mom and my sister were in Montreal. My father just passed away, and there was no way I was going to stay in Ottawa, and my family's going to be in Montreal. So I spoke to the Bar Association. They said, listen, there's no exceptions, except if you find someone in Montreal that wants to switch and do the bar in Ottawa, you can switch with them. So I put an ad out at the time. It was like, there's no internet. It's 1989. I put an ad out. I borrow $1,500. I offer the $1,500. I find a guy right away for $1,500. That's like $15,000 today, maybe more. So I find a guy who switches with me, and I end up the last person to be registered in the Montreal Bar School class, and I sit right behind Anne-Marie. So total coincidence.
Wow. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, kind of ring on her finger.
Butterfly effect. It's crazy, right? That's like that's just not going to happen. It's pretty wild. So so now you meet her. And
by the way, I believe in a lot in. I don't believe in fate, but I believe a lot in the movie not closing doors, sliding doors with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes,
I really believe in that, right? Like you miss the train, you make the train, you cross the street, you don't cross the street, you turn left instead of turning right, you get lost, then you find your way back. So I believe in that. I just don't believe that that's all preordained. So so I end up in this situation, and Anne-Marie is engaged, getting married 3 months from then. So adds a layer of complexity to the story. But anyways, so that's
like Antonio. That's like Antonio a bit. Antonio, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but he's got better moves than I. He's smooth. So anyway, we end up hooking up, and obviously she breaks her engagement, and we end up getting married about a year and a half later. We have 2 boys. One's turning 25, Dylan. He's got a degree from McGill University, and he just did 2 years in the intelligence of the Israeli army. Very proud of him. My other son, Ryan, he's 19, almost 20. He's at second year at McGill University studying undergrad. Really good kid, good basketball player. Opposite of me, 6 feet tall, big wingspan. Comes from his mother's wings. Very funny. So I hope they've had a good life. I mean, they've been to like 50 countries. I think that's good. They've lived in Europe and in Canada. They have seen me be quite public. So there's a lot of things about me that are public. I'm quite public in Canada from a business point of view, but also from a philanthropy and social standpoint and a political standpoint. I take a lot of positions here, defending minorities. I have a platform here in Canada. So, and all the money is public. So all the share sales are public. So all the sort of net worth stuff and all of that is public. And I don't know if it's negative. I mean, it's not positive, but I don't know if it's necessarily negative. I think the only negative part about it is that everyone makes their own story. And I hope that kids don't get pressured into thinking that they have to perform at a level that their parent performed at. They could perform at that level, but in something completely different.
Right.
But what you can't replace is that, I grew up with very little money, had a, somewhat dysfunctional family home, even though a very loving family home. And I needed to make money. I started delivering newspapers at 11. I owned and ran a snack bar restaurant at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, every summer, making money, saving money.
Entrepreneurial spirit, and you were very motivated and hungry from a young age to be successful and to go for it, right? I mean, it sounds like you're just you just kind of found your way to the next thing and got it's pretty amazing. Obviously we're friends, but it's also just as a mentor, I have times or business ideas or things I get to run by you, and I really, your perspective is unique, and you have a lot of experience. I mean, in gaming, there's really you've done it. You've done a lot of different things, and now you've gone into Cirque du Soleil, other ventures outside of gaming, which we're gonna cover. But I as a father, I want to know about that too. How is it like being a CEO of these major companies and having a lot of pressure and just a lot of, I'm sure, working long hours a lot of time? How was that with being a father? Is there any advice you would give to someone that's working really hard, that is very passionate about their business, but also has, you know, children at a young age. Is there anything that you would tell Mitch Garber's younger self, like looking back?
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't think I spent too much time away from them. I really made an effort that if I had a flight on a Monday and I can get back on Tuesday night, I did it. I didn't spend the extra night. I didn't spend the extra day. I didn't go to the useless meeting. I mean, if I could speak to my younger self, first of all, FaceTime changes everything. It changes everything. And there's kind of no excuse to not be, and by the way, I failed at this. So there were times I was in Vegas for 2 days or 3 days, and I texted my kids, or they texted me briefly. We didn't speak for a long time. We didn't do FaceTime. So I didn't do all this. Plus FaceTime didn't exist at the beginning of my tenure in Vegas. But so FaceTime changes everything. You now have this opportunity, and you have to seize the opportunity to speak to them face to face. A text is not a face to face conversation. It's an easy way out, and it's a great accessory to a live conversation. But if you let today's younger generation forget what a live conversation is, they'll never have one. So you'll never see your kids super young, but my kids are never talking on the phone. Either it's FaceTime. Let's say that's 10%. 10% FaceTime, 90% text, chat, Snapchat story, whatever. But 0% talking on the phone without video. That's fine. And even FaceTime, I think it's light. So I'd like to encourage more of the face-to-face, but I don't have any regrets about time spent. And I have to be perfectly honest, I've never felt a lot of business pressure. I felt it at Party Gaming when we turned off the US. Right. I was incredibly stressed. I mean, I almost had a nervous breakdown during that time. That was a really stressful time. And that was probably the worst time of my life, but it lasted a year.
Right.
It lasted a year. So,
and how was that completely blindsided? Was that you woke up and saw the news, or was there like, hey, this is probably going to happen?
No. Hey, woke up, saw the news. Woke up, heard the news. No one thought this was going to happen. And if everyone thought we were going to get legalized poker, actually, we thought we were going in the opposite direction.
Wow. So that's a just even crazier swing, right? Because if it gets legalized, it's even going to be that much of a bigger deal.
I think what happened was we all became numb to these threats that there's going to be a bill to make internet gaming illegal, right? So yeah. And then it happened.
What is your thoughts on the current landscape of I guess we got to talk COVID-19 and how that impacts sports, how that impacts a lot of the things that you're doing as well, and just in general how it impacts life and what you're seeing from your perspective, especially in Montreal. You said the city's doing pretty well, and the government, people are sort of taking it very seriously and staying inside and doing all that, which is good. But I'm curious what you believe. Do you think poker? Do you have a guess on the U.S.? Do you feel like it's moving the right direction? Or is it pause? Like, is this? I mean, you're probably surprised. It sounds like you're saying that it's not in the U.S. by now, right? I mean, you're in Canada. Canada neighbors the U.S. It's like UK. These countries, gaming's allowed. There's fantasy sports passed at a federal level in the U.S. now. So state by state has sports. Bet gambling is, but poker somehow, which is much more skill, as you know, than fantasy. Still is this kind of just left in limbo. Yeah.
So now that I'm out of it, I can tell you that somehow I'm part of a big failure. And I was probably one of the most visible people who collectively failed to really be able to make the case that poker is a game of skill, and that poker should be legalized, and that poker and responsible gaming can be enforced. And it's not for lack of trying, but we failed. And, you have to admit when you failed. So, how could it be that Phil Hellmuth has 14 bracelets?
15, yeah.
15, sorry. If just everyone who's playing has the same chance to win, but one guy has won 15 of them, and 99% of the people who play have won none.
Right.
Like, so making this argument and losing the argument that poker is a game of skill when 99% of the people haven't won, 99.9% of the people haven't won. right?
And
then the super subset of people who are absolutely designated as professional poker players. Like, people don't let them play in their game because they're professional, right? So it's a game of chance. I want you at my game, right? Because I'll take your money. By chance, I'll take your money. Right? So how many games are you not allowed to play in? Jeff Gross? Many. Most, actually. Yeah. Okay? Unless they want to have a pro poker player because they like, the stories. They actually don't want you there because you're a nuisance.
Right.
You're going to take their money.
Absolutely.
So, I've been part of this since 1997. 1996, I read the Roxy Roxborough article. 1997, 98, 99, I understood poker. 2003, 4, 5, poker started, on the internet. 2005 IPO, 2006 UIGEA. So how can I look at you right now and tell you that, we're close to getting a federal online poker bill? I understand why it's sports, because sports has interested parties like Adam Silver in the NBA and the NHL and the NFL. Poker doesn't have anybody meaningful, okay, like the NFL, okay, behind it. But fantasy sports absolutely has all the leagues, backing up the truck for it, because let's be honest, nobody watches the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Jets except that they either have money on the game or they have players on their fantasy team in the game. There's no other reason to watch. Or you're from Jacksonville.
Thursday night, a 2-12 team playing, and there it could be, exactly.
In fantasy, that's as good a game as the Patriots.
Yeah, it might even be better because maybe there's like people aren't paying attention as much, and there's a spot where you can get real value. A guy who's underrated, and the stuff. So absolutely, no, you're right. I mean, but do you believe like Michigan just passing? That was a big deal. It's my home state. It was supposed to pass last year in the midnight hour. The governor on the way out of office vetoed it when it was like a sure deal. One of my best friends is a top lobbyist there and said that was like one of the craziest beats, but then they got it back this year. West Virginia passed Pennsylvania, pretty major player. I mean, what does it take? What do you see? Do you think it's like, New York it seems like,
I hope I'll tell you what I think it takes. I know it takes.
Yeah.
It takes shared liquidity. So all these states passing poker, to me, it's not that relevant. So if Virginia has poker, that's not a big business. A big business is that all Virginians can play with all Hawaiians and all New Yorkers and all Texans and all days and all hours of the night, and you have super liquidity in a huge country. And then start talking about liquidity with the Swedes and liquidity with the Brits and liquidity with the Canadians. So you're so far away from that. And like I said, I'm part of the failure of that to happen because it should have happened.
Well, a lot of successes, I guess, if you could say that, something didn't go through. It can't all just fall all in a row at all times. But is there anything you would have done? You said it's not for lack of trying. Is there anything looking back? Do you think there was a way at that time? Because, maybe now it's not like it's not going to, it can't happen. But is there something you could have done differently, or like looking now easily to look back, say, oh, this would have probably worked? Or was it a matter of the people in office or the Supreme Court or whoever? Was it just like not going to work, or was there a way to do something more?
So
from this
now we're going to get into something controversial, and
it's
okay. I don't feel great saying it because I'm a Canadian, but at the same time, I've been working in America for a lot of my life. So our political system in Canada is not perfect. Okay, so I'm not preaching like, oh, we have a perfect system and you don't. But there's something incredibly fucked up about your system where you're able to donate an unlimited amount of money for unlimited access. I mean, if there's one corrupt part of the American system, it's that you're able to give the presidential candidate or the senatorial candidate or the party $100 million and have dinner at the White House every Friday and whisper in the ear of the lawmakers. So it wasn't a question of, is poker a game of skill or not? It's a question of who has more influence, Sheldon Adelson or Mitch Garber? Sheldon Adelson. I have no influence, So, and that's not making excuses. I'm just telling you that you can, in the United States, buy regulation, deregulation, stalling, speeding up of things that are of interest to you. And that's been clearly shown by these super PACs. And if I had one suggestion as to how to make the US system better, it would be to eliminate the super PACs, whether it's the sugar lobby or the tobacco lobby, or we could argue about the gun lobby if we want, or it's the don't let online poker become legalized because I don't believe in it and I own this land-based casino in Las Vegas on the Strip that makes an unbelievable amount of money. I think that it's almost like we're playing basketball 5-on-2.
Right.
How are we going to win? Right?
NHL, you got a double power play. It's like you're just going to get peppered the whole time, right? Yeah. Well, I want to talk about the NHL and that as well, but let's talk about COVID-19 and gaming in particular in casinos, because it's like that movie Contagion. You said about the casino, and it's kind of obvious too, just in general, right? Casinos not you touching chips; it's a closed area. Casinos are impacted just like many industries, but dramatically and maybe more so. I don't think they're just going to open the doors at casinos. It'll be one of the things that probably gets the latest to reopen. What are casinos going to do? You see GVC, who owns the parent company of Party Poker, as well as I think BWin, or you correct me if I'm wrong. That they're a major company, one of the big players. Their stock, and I'm sure the other stock, they dipped incredibly low. Like the big drops was there's no sports. Sports betting is huge. What is going to happen with casinos? Is there a chance that they try to get online? Are they just going to sit back? Like, do you think this could actually spar some sort of something in the industry with that, or no? Is it just going to be like?
So I want to measure my words, because there are a lot of people that will watch this podcast that are not at all related to poker.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you sort of my overall view, and my overall view comes from almost nothing to do with my opinion. It has to do with me consulting with policymakers, government officials, deans of medical school, immunologists. So I've been doing that in helping the Quebec government on how we're going to get our economy back. So talking similarly to the US, it's a timing issue. I'm also looking at it from the perspective of being the chairman of Cirque du Soleil. So I'll start with the Cirque du Soleil and I'll work backwards.
Yes.
So the Cirque du Soleil, sadly, and this is very sad, we laid off 4,500 workers. Of those workers, most of them are performers that don't have a meaningful bank account balance and don't have many other ways to make a living. These are acrobats, former Olympians, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Our payroll was about $280 million a year. Big business, okay? And our business went to zero. And if I think about all the models about how the economy is going to come back, the very last thing that's going to come back is a large gathering of people in a small space to watch a live event for 2 hours. So that business is the last business to come online, maybe only accompanied by the cruise line business.
Yeah.
Okay. And the rest of the businesses, and I'll get to the casino in a second. So the Cirque du Soleil does not have a TV contract. So the NFL can play its games with 3,000 fans all spread out if they want. They have a great TV contract. Fantasy will go on as usual. Players can get tested on a Friday. If they pass the test, they play on Sunday. The refs are tested. There's a minimal number of people inside the place. Everyone's been tested. That you can do. It's a TV game. It's a TV contract business. Live gate, it's worth something. Merchandise, of course, is worth something, but it's really all made on the TV. A lot of it's made on the TV contract.
Yeah.
The NBA, the NHL, the NFL, you saw that the WWE is going to be fighting from inside a studio. I think it's in Miami. I think the UFC is going to do the same thing at Dana's place in Vegas. So that makes a lot of sense. You test negative or positive, both of you, and you can fight. And there's a ref and there's a few cameramen, and that's kind of easy to do, right? Now let's get to the casinos.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with the chips. Okay, so I'll get to that in a second. I don't know. I have an idea. That could be worked out, that each player is playing with, one denomination and it's a color, and the only person who touches that color chip is the person you're purple. You just have more purples or less purples. You never touch the yellows. Yellow guy, you're yellow. You're red. Okay. Blackjack table, 2 players maximum. You're 6 feet apart. Vegas can make money with 2 people at a blackjack table. Craps, 4 people around the table. You can make money with that. Elevator, on, yeah. 2 people in an elevator, no problem. Restaurant, every second table, free, 6 feet apart. Okay, you can make money there. And so the casino can open. The sports book can open. the games can be played. So I started with the worst scenario, which is the one that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
You know,
how many? You said he laid off 4,500 employees. How many? You said the total 280 million. How many total employees are there? Or those
so I think we laid off 4,700 out of 5,000.
Okay.
I got the exact number. Yeah, there were 5,000. There's like 200,
it's
200 left.
Okay.
Okay. Wow. So the business is shut down. The business is shut down. Can I see a scenario where we sell every third seat at O and everyone's 3 seats apart? And can we break even for some period of time? And these are all things we'll have to think about. But there is a thinking pattern that we're not going to see live events with fans until mid-2021. Because if there's no vaccine, then there's nothing different in 3 months from now than today. I sit next to Jeff Gross at a Springsteen concert. He's asymptomatic. I go to my mom's house for dinner, okay, and I've given her COVID. That's the same as right now. We may as well go now, right? There's no point being home now if we're going to not do that in 2-3 months from now.
Right.
So,
other than maybe like you said, the testing, knowing about if you can have it or not, or the vaccine. The vaccines, even if they have it and they think it's right, it still takes like a year, like you said. I mean, it takes a while you can't just like put a vaccine out next week, right? I mean, there's testing, there's a
like 18 months away. So we're working on a program here in Quebec where I think slowly we'll get back to the economy, start with the factories. If a factory has 2 shifts, maybe it'll have 4 shifts now. So instead of 100 people on the floor twice, you'll have 50 people on the floor 4 times, and they'll be spaced out. And instead of a fire marshal, the fire marshal will now also be the social distancing marshal to make sure that everyone's washing their hands and staying 6 feet apart. And if they're supposed to wear a mask, they're wearing a mask. Right. And this is all very doable. That the bus and subway will be 1/3 full or 2/3 empty, and that's when the doors will close. So there's a lot that goes into no carpooling of more than 2 people. The carpools, front seat, back seat. I can think of a million things that we're talking about.
Yeah, and that stuff would help. But even like in the scenario where the restaurants are this it's still complicated, right? Because then you're relying on people to still do things the right way. You know, it's like kind of just like blanket statement. No one go outside, no one go to the beach. Because if you say, oh, go to the beach and stay apart, you know, it's just like it allows error, right? Humans, it allows people. So it's complicated even then. So to your point, there's no foreseeable immediate. This isn't going to happen next week or in 2 weeks. So there's a protocol. There's a possibility things are, you know, hopefully going to expedite, but these are major. There's going to be major disruption in these industries for some time. But
at the same, and there will be, and I think that there's something to be said for self-policing. People no longer light up a cigarette in a restaurant because there's kind of self-policing. People all walk their dogs on leashes because they're self-policing. You have the odd person who, is like an anarchist and I'll smoke where I want. It's the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe in the law. Okay, so fine. Those people will always exist. But no, so I think we're going to be disrupted for a while now. You know, I'm in this fortunate, never mind in financially speaking. You know, you and I can fool ourselves into thinking that it's a digital economy and we could work with our computers and our phones. But, North America is driven by the person in a factory manufacturing something. It's not driven by Mitch and Jeff on their computers making day trades and and playing online poker and selling things on eBay. Like a few people do that, right? Like there's like some percentage of the population that could actually make their living just using their computer. Then there's a percentage that can stay home and do their work. So accountants, lawyers, there are people, but the dentist can't, the factory worker can't,
restaurant owner,
storekeeper can't.
Yeah.
So most people, the bus driver can't, the taxi driver can't, the Uber driver can't. So the restaurant owner can't, the hairdresser can't, the dry cleaner can't. All these people need to be out, right?
Yeah.
Now, most of these people have not made $1 in the last 90 days or in the last 60 days.
Right.
And so with all this relief packages, where's the money going? Is my dry cleaner going to get enough money and enough relief from their landlord and enough help from the government and the banks to make up for 90 days of lost revenue? Like 90 days for a dry cleaner, it's everything. 90 days for a hairdresser, it's everything.
And you start getting statistics about people that live paycheck to paycheck or have $400 or these type of things, and you start. That's where, like you're saying, it can crumble, or it can really just disrupt everything. Places close, and then even when it's time to go back, and it's like, okay, now you can wear a mask, or now let's go outside. And there's a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of backup. Even dentists, doctors, there's going to be a lot of it's just things you're not maybe thinking about how it really impacts stuff. So what do you think? And let's just talk about the sports example. And you're a minority owner of the NHL team. So when do you believe? Yeah, there. Look at that.
That's
right?
Not the logo. That's not the team logo. That's a generic.
I like it. So what's happening with that? Like, when do you think there will actually be sports games played? Like you're saying, this example, you don't need fans. Like, is the NBA playoffs going to happen? Is the NHL, like, when do these major sports like turn back on where there's competition?
Yeah. So I think one of the things I don't like is that watching so much television now, it seems that everyone thinks they need to know the answer. Mm-hmm. No one likes to say, I don't know. So if you told me, listen, Mitch, the Lakers are playing the Clippers on Saturday, and on Friday, all the players could take a 2-minute test, and the referees and the scorekeepers and the announcers and a few maintenance crew and the trainers, etc. So 150 people, let's just call it that for argument's sake. And then 1,000 fans. So there's somebody in there witnessing the game, right?
Right.
So you test 1,000 people, and you can do that in an hour. Then I would say to you, hey, why not? Let's put the game on TV. Let Mickelson play Tiger. That's great. If you don't have fans, and Mickelson, Tiger, their caddies, and the camera people can get tested, then we could start to be entertained by sports. So I think it's possible if all that testing is possible. And I think the leagues and the fans would want it. I mean, we're sitting at home, man. If you could watch Mickelson and Tiger play skins right now, I think they'd have, I think they'd have 500 million viewers of this thing, because there's nothing to watch.
Yeah.
So I think that from that perspective, I think that you could see it. I just don't know NBA playoffs, NHL. I don't want to be the one that says I think they're going to write off the season. I think it's become a bit trivial. There's so many thousands of people dying that let's not be idiotic about it. So I need my sport. You don't need your sports. What you need is, you need your food.
Almost from that thinking, not about necessarily even the sports or how it's going to happen or will it happen. What happens to, and you see players and teams doing, giving donation, because like the other part you're not even thinking about is these are businesses in themselves. The arenas, they have employees, workers. So what's happening? I mean, every sports franchise and different things are doing things differently or in a different way. But what happens with the people that are in the organization that are working for, let's just take, I don't know, in the NHL in Seattle, like, what happens to the overall business or within the workers and the employees?
Yeah, so Seattle and the Cirque du Soleil are completely different. So Seattle was meant to be a cost center until, we have revenue because we're selling tickets and skyboxes and sponsorship. And so money is starting to come in, but it's meant to be, it's almost a $2 billion cost center, building an arena in Seattle, building a practice facility just outside of central Seattle, building an arena in Palm Springs for the AHL team. Yeah. And then, of course, hiring people to be able to build up the franchise, the general manager, the statistics people, all the analytics, et cetera, the marketing, the sales. So we're supposed to be spending the money we're spending right now and hiring the people we're hiring right now. We don't have games anyway. We wouldn't be having games until October of 2021. So, and the Cirque du Soleil, I don't know if there's no live gathering of people for entertainment.
Right.
Carrying it is really, really hard. Of course, the Cirque will come back. The question is when. It is not easy to shut a business to zero for a long period of time. You could do it for a month,
right?
For a month and a half, for 2 months. And so there's, there are people, most of them on unemployment. There are people in bad shape.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's yes. And then and if you were to just looking back on the casino business type stuff too, with the sports and stuff going that avenue, do you feel that like same kind of thing with the Vegas casinos? You said you gave some suggestions or ways that the casinos could technically turn back on, but do you feel that maybe they might make a play to partner, align, or do something with online, or is it just too complicated anyway? Because even if they wanted to all say, let's do this, or let's get into an online venue or poker site, or it's just still it's not just like, okay, like there's still laws, there's a process, there's a procedure. You can't just say like, all right, this is happening, let's do this.
Yeah, you think, of course. Listen, you think MGM or Caesars wouldn't love tomorrow to just turn on a platform and take all the American poker liquidity? So right. Of course they can't do it. I think right. the land-based casinos that didn't buy into online businesses are probably regretting it today. I mean, a big land-based gaming company should own a online business that makes 100 million of EBITDA. They all should. There were enough companies out there, to figure out a way to own one.
Right. Is this something where do you think Sheldon Adelson, who's the biggest, basically the reason, I mean, he gets credit for the reason why online poker isn't there. He's in, like you mentioned some of these dinners and donations, and with Trump, he's aligned with him and all these different things. Like, is this something where do you think he's at this moment, he's like, wow, this like, does it even shift or change him, or is he just like so set in his ways, or it's just like whatever, like he doesn't even care? Yeah. You think he's like,
I've been away from it for a while now, and I don't speak to him, but I've never heard him say anything positive about the internet or online games, and so look, I never worked for him, and I'm sure he wouldn't have agreed to buy Playtika, so I'm happy that I didn't work for him at the time.
Right.
That's just not in his. And it's hard for me to criticize his success. Of course, he ran Comdex, he owned the Las Vegas Convention Center, he built the Venetian. He's the biggest donor to the state of Israel. So there are a lot of things about him that I actually like. This is not one of them.
For sure. Okay. Well, that's and just to kind of hit right in down the center of what you are familiar with poker, the WSOP. What's the happening with that? I mean, this is something that's unprecedented. It's also relevant in poker with this type of World Series of Poker. The history, it's never had a disruption. What happens this summer? What is the most likely scenario? Do you think it would get, if you were there? What would be your sort of plan of attack or sort of way of handling this? Do you think it's a postponement, cancellation, try to move it online? What do you think?
You might be able to move some qualifying online, or some contests online. I think, I don't want to speak for Ty. I mean, Ty's probably working on this 24/7, but I think that Ty has no choice but to follow what the Rio and the other Vegas Strip hotels do. So if they say 2 at a poker table, well, I don't know how you manage the main event, but he might be able to figure it out. Maybe the game has to speed up. I don't know. I'm just making this up, but I mean, certainly, you have all these people at 9 at a table, and all of a sudden it has to be 2, and you don't have 5 times as many tables. So is there another place where you could put 5 times more tables and people are playing at one hotel, and then consult? I don't know. I think you have to think about all these ideas, because come September, October, November, there's probably a way for people who are 6 feet apart to be playing. Vegas casinos will be open way before then. So what's the rule going to be on how far away you have to be and how many people consider a poker table? It's quite, that part's easy. Making the rule, or do you limit the number of people in the main event so that, we're not going to be able to have 10,000 people in the main event.
Right. But do you see it? Do you see putting the World Series of Poker online on partnering with one of the major sites? There's only a handful, like 2, really 3 probably options. Is that something? Do you see that? Would that take away the authenticity of the World Series?
It might take away the legality. Where are you guys all going to be playing from? So you're in Miami, so you can't be playing from there. So
well, I'm set up outside of the U.S. Like I could get to somewhere and do it, like just like I stream when I go on Twitch. You know, you could do it, but yeah, it's not. If it's you're talking about the coronavirus, how are you exactly? How are you telling everyone in the U.S. that we're like that's a lot of the customers are U.S. based? You're gonna say, hey, well, you have to go get set up on this site outside, and which I am, but 98.9% aren't, and it's not even. You have to get a bank account, you have to have an address outside of the U.S., and even then, you know, you're promoting people to travel, or you got to leave when really you're not supposed to. So it's like, yeah, can you really have it online and just? It just seems
tricky. I'm not in it, and there's so many legal questions to be had, and then what do you end up with? The best online poker player, and not to mention, then you're opening the door on collusion, all these other things for this. So if you have a 10K main event, you're gonna have the winner, and it's like, you got a guy playing from his underwear and somewhere, and you don't even know. And it's one thing if everyone's streaming or you're on video and it's Twitch or whatever, but 99.9% of people are just not. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's not the worst option, but it does seem to open up a ton of. Okay, so here's the good thing about the World Series. It really doesn't matter what month it's played in.
Yeah.
As long as there's not another tournament that's, nearly as important being played at the same time. And so let's imagine for a minute that there's going to be collaboration between everybody. So, if the event in the Bahamas is taking place at X date, then of course the World Series won't take place at that same date. Yeah. I'm making all this up, but it seems after 20 years of being in this, it seems pretty obvious that those are the kinds of thinking.
The schedules are sort of set. The times there's a little overlap, and now poker's actually. I mean, before this, it's gotten so popular. The live numbers seem to be thriving everywhere, right? So it's pretty. But yeah, at this time of year, this month, this venue, this company's doing this, and you try not to attack each other. You try to give a little bit of space. But yeah, that to me seems like a pretty good option to move it to December, January, or some other time, or not. It's like you said, it's not set in stone. It's like the Olympics too. Olympics, obviously, I think they ended up deciding to move it a year, just scoot it back a year.
I think they're going to now cancel the 2021 as well. They may just miss it completely. I don't know. And then Tokyo gets the Olympics whenever the Olympics are played, and yeah, that's obviously quite sad. Have you had Ty? I know you've had over 50 guests, but have you had Ty on your podcast?
Not yet. No, I would love to have Ty or Jack coming up here. I mean, I think it's one of those times where it's super relevant. It's very stressful, I'm sure, and I don't know. They, like you said, I'm sure he's working on it day in, day out, and they're going over all the scenarios. But yeah, it would be great to have Ty on to kind of go over this.
They have a great team over there. Gregory Chauchon, Bill Rinney, all these guys. These guys are all really, really good.
Yeah, they're sharp. They're sharp for sure. So, all right. Well, Mitch, we have a ton of questions. It's really cool to see how many people dove in on questions. I just want to maybe before we dive into the questions, give us a little more. Just talk about, because you do a lot of different business investments and different things. Maybe just tell us, round out sort of your portfolio and with the Cirque du Soleil. We mentioned your former CEO of Party Gaming, you're a minority owner in Seattle, and I'm looking here on your Instagram, and you also have some looks like investments. I've seen you've been involved with the Landvin and some of these other stuff. Any other?
You can see I shave my head like George St. Pierre. He's a friend of mine who I admire greatly. So I'm trying to do his workout every day. He puts another exercise on Instagram. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I see. Listen, I'm following along. I know what's going on, Mitch.
You see that? I own a piece of that. See that that poker face? You see Dylan over there on the top right? See this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I own a piece of that company. Has almost 500,000 daily users. That's pretty good company. So you're streaming for fun poker. The streaming works amazing. So it's kind of like FaceTime poker, and that's a private table. That's me, my son, and two of his friends in that picture. So this company's taken off like Zoom. It's the Zoom of poker. So
yeah, I know. I actually,
I'm face is what it's called.
That's very cool. I haven't seen this exactly, but I did see you promote. I didn't know. I've never seen anyone use it. I know. Zoom, people are playing on these private apps and doing Zoom. So it's essentially
real money.
You're saving. Well, yeah, but you could or couldn't technically here same way. Like guys aren't playing on, they're not depositing. No, if someone's playing a home game and they're working it out, but technically this is just saving you having everyone to call Zoom. It's built in. It's built into this platform.
Look at his hand.
That's who won this pot? You were out. That's it's an interesting board there. That's a great idea. It's fun. It's how long has that been going? How long have you had that?
Going for about a year, but when I invested in it, I did it because I met the guy who founded it. My friend was investing in it. He goes, "We need to have you part of the ownership group." I go, "Let me bring Dylan and and meet the guy together because Dylan loves poker and I don't play much poker. So we met him in a hotel lobby in Israel, and Dylan loved it. So he said, okay, we'll make an investment in it. And this is like, you need luck. So I don't want to make money off of COVID, but the point of the matter is that this was going to be a reasonably successul app. It wasn't going to have 500,000 DAU. I mean, it might, maybe, but in years to come. And all of a sudden, everyone's stuck at home 24 hours a day. And you can play poker and actually talk to each other in a really good user interface. Wow. Okay. So
that's, I mean, exact, like you're saying, it's those type of things. It's also, so many of these events are unforeseeable. What happened to you, UIGEA, that was, you wake up, it's like, that's not supposed to happen, or that's not on the radar. And then, this thing as well, it's this COVID kind of like, this is a once in a lifetime event, hopefully for us, that we don't have to experience something like this again and everyone gets through it. But these are things you can't really plan for. It sort of goes along. It's not about what happens, how you react to what happens. And luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? You gotta have stuff ready, and you gotta be aware and alert and do your best when these type of situations arise. So so that's another project. Is there anything else?
So basically, look, what I do today is I have 3 pockets of investment. The 4th pocket is philanthropy. So in the biggest pocket, the money is managed for me, but a lot of it is with Apollo and TPG, either as a co-investor or as an actual limited partner investor. And then I have the bucket, which is real co-investing, which means Apollo is going to buy rack space, big company. I'm going to co-invest, sit on the board, and help the CEO and the management team grow the business and for an eventual exit by Apollo. And so I have quite a few of those. The Cirque du Soleil is one. I make an investment. I become the chairman of the company. I make an investment in rack space alongside Apollo. I get on the board of the company. We just bought Shutterfly, big photo album, photo storage company. Sit on the board of that, invest in the company. And Lanvin, which is a big fashion house in France. There's a fashion group called the Faux Sun Fashion Group. It's a Chinese holding company that owns 4 fashion companies: Lanvin, Wolford, women's hosiery company, St. John Knits, and a men's suit maker in Italy. Invest in the company, sit on the board of the parent company. So I really enjoy doing that. Then I have an account that I play with, and I invest in Canadian stocks, and I sort of watch them. Now it's become slightly more active because this is a bit of a shit show, as one might say. And and then philanthropy is the other side. Actually, all the money I make in that trading account, I give to charity. So I usually try to give away, a few $1 million a year, and that's worked out quite well. So
that's it's I know you definitely have your plate full. You got a lot of cool projects, and it's very diverse. And now it seems like, with these different clothing, you got different you're doing sports stuff, you've done gaming stuff. So it's fun. It seems like
I only do it if I like it and like the people. So that's where I got lucky. I'm 55. I no longer want to run a big company. So I don't want to be the CEO of a big company anymore. And if the company that I'm invested in has a good CEO, wow, that's like the greatest thing ever. It's like, for me, it's like having you and Antonio play poker for me. Perfect. You go ahead.
Well, we missed the email on Poker Face, and we're sponsored by Party Poker. But Mitch, any poker, I want to let us know. I will download that. Maybe we could play with Antonio. We could get a little.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. Get Dylan.
Okay. I'll talk before you go to the questions. I want to talk 1 second about the poker community because so kind of no one's ever asked me this, and I see a lot of the questions are about like, what's my favorite poker game, so I don't misrepresent myself. I don't play a lot of poker. I play tournament poker almost always for charity. I like tournament poker better than cash game poker. Most of the people that I know that play poker are pros, so I definitely don't want to play with them. But what I figured out really early on when I was the CEO of Caesars is that the poker players that I met were the smartest, sharpest people that I knew. The way they think about things, the way they pivot, the way they analyze things, the way they care about news, data, analytics, the social consciousness. So all of a sudden I find myself, with you, Antonio, Phil Locke, Rast, I mean, the list goes on. And even one of my great stories about the poker community is that Guy Liberté was always inviting me to Burning Man, and I never went with him. And Guy's one of my best friends, obviously. You and I hang out with him in Burning Man. But the poker group invited me, and I was like, wow, the poker guys invited me to their camp at Burning Man. Antonio Spendiari, obviously, and you're my two best friends in the poker world. Yeah. And I went twice in their camp. And I remember the second year that I went, I was sitting alone at a picnic table in our camp. And for people who don't know, Burning Man is just this massive space in the desert where, there's nothing other than, how many people are there? 75,000 people.
Yeah.
On bicycles in the sand.
130. That was with Dan Coleman. That's where you got to. He was there.
I'm sitting at this picnic table, just me and Dan Coleman, and I think he doesn't know who I am, and I'm pretty sure it's him. And so we start talking, and I really, really like this guy a lot.
Great
and
guy.
The conversation that we had was, you really, in the eyes of the World Series of Poker, after you won, you really acted in a way that we consider to be unacceptable. And we actually thought you were a real asshole, because we put on this big tournament and we put a lot of money into it and a lot of effort into it. And we like to pamper and back all the players that play in the tournament and treat the winners like gold. And you have the right.
He won 14 million or more. He won the $1 million one drop that 2014, I believe, or 16. Yeah. That's right.
So, and Guy and I invented that tournament, the $1 million one drop, amazing tournament. It's for charity, $1 million buy-in. I mean, you know the score. So I said, you won the biggest tournament for charity. And we talked and we talked and we talked. And I hope he would say this, but we really became friends. We hung out. I really like the guy. I think the guy is a great guy. And it just goes to show you, I absolutely judged him by that action. That was the only thing I knew about him. I didn't know who he was. He won the tournament. He won a ton of money. And he kind of just walked out and didn't let himself be interviewed and didn't really care. And then I meet him and I say, this guy is, what a deep thinker this guy is. What a good guy he is.
He's a very good friend of mine, and he is a great guy. And that's awesome. You got to get to kind of, like you're saying, you get to relate, talk to people and see and get to know someone better in that spot. So is that something that, but looking back just in that example, because it is for a great cause. What was your sort of takeaway, or what sort of his stance, or just in general, just kind of getting to know him better on just like how he approaches life and things? Or
I think that in the poker community, you have a lot of anti-establishment people. Mm-hmm. There's a group. They're not together, but there's a group. I didn't mention Liv Bory. I love her, so I got to meet her at Burning Man as well. And she's a bit anti-establishment. She's like this deep thinking astrophysicist. She acts and thinks a bit differently, which is what I like about her and what she probably, thinks of herself. So it's hard to predict. It's kind of, you don't know what you're getting. You didn't invite the person. They came to play.
Right.
There's no obligation. He bought in $1 million. I don't remember who backed him, but he was bought in for $1 million.
Right.
And he won, and he deserved to win. He's a great poker player.
Yes.
So I'm going to bet you. Why don't you ask him this, and maybe you'll have him on.
Yeah, he's coming on.
Okay, so ask him if tomorrow you won a one drop again, and Mitch Garber was there, and he put his arm around you and said, "Hey, listen, we really need you to come do an interview, and maybe even wear the one drop hat. It's for charity. Would you do it?" I'm going to bet you that he says yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, Dan, again, he's a very unique person. He's very, very, one of the biggest hearts I know, very generous, very kind guy. So yeah, I mean, I think,
he's super jacked too.
Yeah. He works out, and he's got he's a Brazilian girlfriend as well. It's my wife and his wife are friends. He's a great guy. We'll have him on. We will ask him that. And actually, just to touch on that one drop with over 5 million raised for charity. I know in the 2012, every year, I think 111,000 or so, a big portion for each buy-in, or it was a 1 million plus, or
11%.
Yes. So a huge amount raised. And I remember in 2012 when Antonio won, Phil Locke, myself, and Antonio, courtesy of one drop, and Antonio sent down El Salvador and Honduras to get to see it in action. And it was it was a very powerful trip, going to see where the money's being used, how it's getting done, the families that don't have water, literally don't have running drinking water, and what this was able to do in these extremely impoverished areas. So that, I got to see firsthand on these trip what was going on, and that's, it's an amazing charity, it's an amazing cause, and that that you and Guy and got to put forward and keep doing. Even a little one for one drop, they do it each year. There's several tournament poker events that go towards this cause, so it's great to see it still going.
By the way, so you bring up the Antonio one drop, right?
Yeah.
How much did you win? 18 million? I don't remember.
Yeah, and change.
So he texts me like 3 days before the tournament. He goes, "You're going to be there, right?" I go, yeah, of course I'm going to be there. I have to be there. I'm going to be there with Guy. He goes, "Because I'm shipping it. So just make sure you're there so that you're part of the after party when I ship it."
Yeah.
And of course I don't take that seriously, but he ends up shipping it. And it ends up being one of the really good party nights that I've ever had. You have Antonio, his dad was so ecstatic and so proud. We got the table next to him for Trickett and his whole gang. Duhamel was there. All the poker community came out to celebrate this big victory. It was pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah, my dad was there as well, partying, and he never goes out and drink. It was one of those ones you just don't forget. Those are those kind of moments that are also not talking about celebrations. Your 50th birthday. We do. As I mentioned earlier, we share a birthday. You had a quite a bash, to say the least. We don't need to go into details, but it was a uniquely special event. I appreciate you letting me piggyback on there and bring.
It was awesome. We had Bill Perkins came, Antonio came, Bagel came. You were there.
Phelps came, some other guys, Begley. Yeah, it was very special. Montreal is. Let's just talk about Montreal for a second too. What an amazing city! Like how did you got to live in Montreal while you were going back and forth to Vegas? It's crazy because it's literally my favorite city. It's actually, if that's where I think I would like to live at some point or commute. It's obviously cold during the winter, but so what? It's a special place. So how did you do that? Where you were commuting? You go once a week, twice a week?
So after party, I bought a plane. So I had my own plane. So I was able to kind of really do it in a convenient way. And I would spend 2 or 3 days there. Then I'd come back. I wouldn't go back for 10 more days. I was trying to build an online company at the time. So it was before I took over the casino portfolio.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really that hard. Okay. I was younger. Don't forget, I'm 55 now. So in 2008, 12 years ago, I'm 43. Like I think it was easier then than it would be now.
Give me a little bit of insight in your day. Like what is how do you meditate? Do you try to wake up, work out every day? Give me like your sleep pattern. Are you up at 5 a.m.? Do you go to bed at your time? Or you just kind of go with the flow?
I sleep about 3-4 hours a night. It's my biggest weakness. I take sleep.
That might be a strength, though. I wish I could only sleep that. I think I sleep too much.
I take sleeping pills, but I try to take them sporadically so I don't, end up kind of addicted to sleeping pills.
Yeah.
But I have a ton of energy. I'm always wide awake. I'm always really energetic. I do work out a lot. I play a lot of sports. I play hockey twice a week, ice hockey, play basketball now during COVID with either one of my sons every single day. We'll go outside. We have a basketball court in the backyard. It's the only thing we can do. So we do that. And I think during the day, what I do is I basically take a lot of calls and look at a lot of investments. And that's what I do. I'm fielding tons of emails and tons of phone calls and tons of texts. And I'm very interactive. I love being, interacting with people. The hardest part of the day is that there's so many people that, they think their idea is the best idea ever and they need to see me. And I'm not an angel investor. I don't have any interest in angel investing. I did do it as a shark on our Shark Tank here in Canada for 2 years.
What was that called? I just saw that somewhere.
It's called Dragon's Den in Canada.
Okay, Dragon's Den, yeah. Okay.
So my day's pretty cool. I'll try to work out as many days as I can. Try to speak to as many people or text as many people. I actually don't like talking on the phone, to be honest. Although the Zoom culture, I've been using Zoom, but like everyone else for the odd appointment, the odd meeting.
Yeah.
I really like this. It allows me to connect with people that I haven't seen in a while. There's no pressure that we have to go for dinner, and then you got to make the plans and then cancel them. this is like perfect. I could, call old friends and hook up with them in a way that I haven't been able to do in a long time. And I think that will continue after COVID, actually.
Yeah, that's a good point. FaceTime does it. It adds a nice touch to it instead of a phone call. I like that. I don't do it quite enough because it's just why not, right? You have that technology. It's way more person friendly and engaging. So let's all right. Well, Mitch, I mean, very, very cool. This is definitely. I mean, again, we always chat, but I always learn something new, and it's nice to get an insight kind of on the timeline on some of that stuff. What is there anything else before we go to the questions, or anything else you want to touch on? It's a lot. We covered a ton of stuff.
Man, you're too good.
I like to talk for sure. I love that you drop and give us the insights into your world. So it's very, very fascinating, and we're going to let's kind of dive into some of these questions here. Do you have it? You see these? I'll read them out. I'll just kind of scan through some. I'm not going
to see that. It looks like it's like a microscopic. Hold on.
It's okay. It's okay. I can I'll just read them out. Someone asking, when will our planet return to normal existence? And we covered a bit of, it's hard to guess on these type of things and normal or not, but do you see, like, let's just say this. When will Mitch Garber and your family, when do you see yourself getting on a plane or traveling? Like, if you had to just guess, just throw out a timeline.
Yeah, first of all, the other country has to accept me. So that's currently, not even in the cards. I can't travel to the States. So imagine, this must be the first time the Canadian-US borders closed, maybe in its history.
Yeah, that's true.
So, never mind Italy and Spain and places in between. Back to normal. Look, it's kind of like the stock market. If we show the Dow right now on the screen, I'm not following the market today. Let's just say it's 22,500. I don't know what it is. And we put this interview in a time capsule, and we agree that on April 15th, 2025, we're going to rewatch it. Okay. The world's going to be perfectly normal. The Dow is going to be 45,000. Okay.
Right.
It's going to have been a blip. Now, it will have enduring effect, the blip. The same way that the cockpits are locked and that you take off your shoes and you can't have more than 100 milliliters of liquid when you get on a plane. So everything changed on 9/11. Okay, so now a whole bunch of other stuff will change. For example, I would say less than 20% of all people will shake your hand from now on. It used to be 95. Now it's going to be 20. In Quebec, we hug and kiss 2 cheeks everyone we meet. That's going to go from 95 to 15, 20. That's a change, okay? That doesn't change our life dramatically. But like I said, in 5 years, you and I go back, we'll relook at this, and the world will be back to normal. Casinos will be full. The World Series of Poker will have already 4 new champions by then. There'll be Super Bowls. Everything will be happening, but somewhat differently.
That's interesting, though. Even like the handshake stuff, it makes it a little bit awkward, right? Because it's like you go for a handshake.
Yeah, you don't want to get hung, right?
You're supposed to, but like you don't know, and then you're like, it's like almost
you
like
do this, you do the whatever.
Yeah, like hey, or something new will take place. But okay, so yeah, fair enough. I mean, we can't predict exactly, but it's things will get back to normal. Like, we can be sure that. And honestly, usually I think these things stuff does come for the better. Overall, right? There is changes. Maybe even people are going to be more healthy. Like overall, like people, less colds, less things. People are going to be more conscious of germs and these type of things. So I think like, net, this could actually be a positive. And it generally doesn't seem like I look at it similar to Black Friday. When I saw, Black Friday happen, I can't play anymore from home or in the US. That in me, it was like, that's the end of the world. But really, it was the best thing that ever happened. I started, I was out of shape, started traveling more, doing other things, and things would have been very different, sort of like the sliding doors. You take the scenario where that just never happened, and my life's completely different, of course. But yeah, for better or worse, I would guess worse, most likely, right? So it's kind of
me too.
It's really hard. It's hard to think about and say, but also some people are locked in, focused right now. Creative people coming up with ideas, being more motivated, and there's a lot of good that I think can end up coming.
I mean, my wife and several others are saying that the planet needed a rest. Now it's too bad that rest costs a lot of lives, but you see the skies in LA and they're clear, and you see that without all the cars on the road and all the factories at full capacity and all the people out there, that the planet's kind of breathing. It's just it's just unfortunate that that we can't let it breathe without taking lives in order for it to be able to breathe.
Exactly. It's well said. And it's also, hopefully there's it doesn't just all go right back to normal. Maybe this is going to spur some major changes. So let's hope that is the case. Let's see. Yeah. Can you see people eventually going back to live games in equal numbers when this virus is finished, or would you see a percentage of those staying online from now on? Do you believe that like casinos will it be back to normal? And let's just take that 5-year example, or do you think this is something that could have a long-term effect where more people will just stay online or just not, become more homebodies? Or do you think it's just like 2-3 years we're back to complete normalcy?
I think my answer is more generational. I've been away from the casino now for 3 years, and I'm really wondering whether my younger son is 19. I don't know that he dreams to go to Vegas and play blackjack and poker. That's a big part of the answer, is whether the next generation that's binging Netflix and Snapchatting, their girlfriends and boyfriends, whether they dream to go to Vegas, maybe to party when they're 21 because it's like a rite of passage. But I just don't know. What about the next generation? This is not sexist. This is factual. That traditionally, almost all of the slot players were women, and they were older women. So this next generation of young women and young men, do they want to sit at a slot machine for 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours and play? My guess is they don't.
Right. Yeah, it's similar to golf. You see this Top Golf kind of coming up. It's like a speed, like almost like bowling for golf, and there's TV and drinking and people are hanging out, and it's like different, where a lot of the golf courses, guys aren't my age, and the youth coming up, they don't want to spend six hours and go out golfing all day long. I mean, it's still some of that, but it's just things adapt, things change, and I think that's something we're seeing. Exactly, culture. Also, the World Series numbers. I remember seeing a stat that shocked me. It was like the number of 21 to 25-year-old players. It was super, super low. Like, I
didn't know that, but that makes sense. Well, also the number of 21 to 25-year-olds that have 10 grand is probably super low too, but
yeah, but exactly. But it's just like it's changed so much. Like it was when I heard the statistic, I was like, wow, that is not, that doesn't look great for, that's poker. But
so Jeff, when I first got to Vegas, the revenue mix was 70 gaming, 30 non-gaming. When I left, it was 30 gaming, 70 non-gaming. So all the nightclubs, all the day clubs, all the retail, all the beach clubs, all the restaurants, all the celebrity chefs, all of that flipped the gaming upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And those casinos weren't built on restaurant revenue. So it also changes the paradigm for the future of the casino industry.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's very interesting. I didn't realize it was that dramatic.
Yeah.
That things change, that's for sure. What is the thing you're most excited about being a part of the Seattle NHL franchise?
There is no one thing. My God, it's a dream. I love every single aspect of it. David Bonderman is a mentor to me and a really good friend, and he's the founder of TPG. And when he asked me if I wanted to be part of the ownership group, was like, yeah, of course I do. And now I'm on the executive committee, so I get to meet a lot with Jerry Bruckheimer and Bonderman and the other executive committee members. Really, these well-known, super successful, philanthropic, Seattle-based business people, rebuilding the Key Arena. It's a $1 billion project. Building an AHL team from scratch. Choosing colors and a logo that's going to come out soon. It would have come out if we didn't have the COVID-19.
Yeah.
Just being involved in every aspect of the planning. So I love business and I love hockey. So can you imagine to be sitting at the table and having a real seat at the table and enjoying it so much? And I just enjoy the guys and the women. Our top, the top analytics person is a woman, and she's so awesome. She knows hockey. We talk a lot about hockey. Ron Francis is the GM. He's unbelievable. Todd Lewicki, really well-known guy, CEO of the team. So, I love it. I love everything, but I can't even talk about it.
I didn't get you too excited. All right, fair enough. So I want to ask about DGen stories. Like you kind of told us one, actually very similar. One of my best friends, Gary Owen, who's actually a lobbyist and represents some stuff, GCSI in Michigan. I actually met too. He was at my birthday, Gary. I don't know if you remember him, Gary Owen. We had the almost similar story in Vegas. We were underage. I think I was 18. I had a fake ID. Same thing. Went in there with the casinos at the Hard Rock, throwing up outside of the cab on the way home. Lost my money. Tried to get more money and used the fake ID at the teller when I was like, I had been drinking, and then just like took it back and we ran, and it was just like a mess. But it was like, I remember 18 years old. I had that Vegas story and being there. Do you have any like degenerate stories? Like, do you have any like that's like a kid experience doing your thing? But did you ever play in the pits or make a big sports bet or roulette? Like have any kind? You're just not really your personality, right? But do you ever?
I lost some money playing cards in. I went to junior college. You have to go to junior college here, but I never really. First of all, I don't love that the poker players, refer to themselves as DGens, even though I know they're joking. But I really don't like it.
It's not a good word. Yeah,
I don't think it's true. I look at you and Bill Perkins and Esfandiari and Locke and Helmuth and I think you guys are amazing. I think you guys are Liv Bory. She's not a DGen. She's, these people are really, really focused and really, really smart. Now, what I have seen in the professional poker world is that a lot of the professional poker players are terrible drinkers. And I've seen some real messes coming out of the hotels where poker tournaments taking place. I could think of a couple in France. I could think of a couple in Vegas.
There's been.
I've seen a couple of guys get really into bad shape. And for whatever reason, after a certain period of time, I realized it is somehow poker related, because you can't have that much bad luck of getting into fights and being dragged out of places. There's a law of numbers.
At some point, you have to take responsibility and for your actions and realize what you're good at and what you're not, and maybe you shouldn't be doing.
Anyway, never you. It's never been you or Antonio for that matter.
True. That's true. Yeah. So okay, fair enough. No, I'd say okay. So, but you've never had like a crazy like, oh, I did something silly or something where you wish you hadn't done. You've played some poker, you've done some stuff, but nothing out of the like super outlier.
No, I don't have a crazy gambling story of mine.
Right. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you have friends and you know many. So
yeah.
We'll let those tell them.
Yeah, there's like I know there's so many crazy things that have happened. I mean, the things you see if you spend enough time in Vegas, second families. I've seen so many crazy things, but
wild deals for sure. Give us a secret to success. What could you help Jeff? Stephen Broth asks, what can you help Jeff add to his game and make him even more of a champion? I mean, I think, I don't know. He's talking about poker, which again, you've said you're not a poker player. What about me? I've actually presented a couple ideas in different business ventures and things, but is there any kind of advice you would give in terms of the business side or maybe being focused on stuff?
Yeah. So all the basic stuff you have, work ethic, outwork your opponent, learn more about the business than anybody else knows about the business, try to team up with the best people, like all that stuff. I would say that the biggest mistake that people make is that they don't quantify the opportunity correctly. And this sounds like a good idea. And I always say to them, okay, how much money ideally would you like to be in a decent position to make? And let's say you tell me, I want to be in a decent position to make $3 million. Like, okay, so let's figure this out for a minute. For you to make $3 million and you own 20% of it, all right, so the thing's got to be worth $15 million. You got to be able to sell it for $15 million or have cash flow that comes out of it, for 10 years into your pocket of $300,000 a year, and then maybe you could sell it. Does this sound like the kind of thing that could produce that? And more often than not, the answer is no.
Right.
So what sounds like a good idea, when you put it on paper and you map out what you would like the reasonable expected outcome to be, you need to know to walk away from it, even though you're attracted to the idea, right? Because you're only going to be able to focus on one or two really, really good projects at any one given time. And so if you choose the one that doesn't have the reasonable expected outcome, then all the good ones are not going to come to you. You're not going to have time to look at them. And you may do something you like, which, by the way, if you say my reasonable expected outcome is to enjoy myself and not to make money, oh, that's amazing. Then I could think of a lot of shit that you could do.
Right. Absolutely. That's, I think that's true. It's hard too. It's hard to get spread out. You start try to do this and that. You have a family, and then all of a sudden you just get spread thin, and it's hard to really be focused on one thing. So we did cover Cirque du Soleil, but how do you think the crisis of the pandemic will affect Cirque du Soleil? Thinking about the future of the company, we covered this already earlier in the podcast. So this was a question from Lady Floppy, but just to kind of close out on that, in terms of you mentioned 4,700 roughly laid off out of 5,000 currently. Is that something though? Is this indefinitely? Are those everyone's like? Is that something when in a year from now, or when it's time and you think live venues can come? Cirque du Soleil, the Cirque du Soleil brand is so strong. It is the
the Cirque du Soleil brand will absolutely come back.
Yeah.
The problem is that we're carrying a zero revenue company. At first when Vegas closed, you thought, okay, it'll close for a month. Now people are talking about fall 2021, right? It's not even fall 2020 yet.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll come back. I think it'll look a bit different than it looks right now. My heart goes out to anyone who's watching this that was laid off, obviously. It's easy to say, well, it wasn't our fault, but that's not the point. The point is we have some of the best, most dedicated people in the world. These people have trained their whole lives. They've been in the Olympics, or they've trained as a family or a group of friends for decades to hone their craft. And there's very few people in the world that need a contortionist or a family of jugglers. So we know that we're the career for these people. If you're an accountant, you could figure out a way to make a living. So I think we have to do our best to try to reinvent the Cirque during the downtime, to replan the reopening of the Cirque, and to truly understand when the world is going to reopen for live entertainment so we could plan properly for it. I think Live Nation probably has they have a similar problem. We're both in the business of selling tickets. We only sell tickets. I mean, we make very little money on food and beverage or merchandise. We sell 13 million tickets a year. It's about a $1.1 billion business. It's all tickets.
Right. Yeah. There's really, it's like you gave the analogy with sports and the merchandising and other different things, what they could maybe do, how they could possibly do it. It doesn't really, Cirque du Soleil, it's not something you really could just put on a show and put it live stream, right? I mean, it's like doesn't work like that.
No.
Where you can do that.
It might. I mean, we'll have to reinvent the business and see if that is a business.
Right, for sure. Let's see. I want to ask you about the online gaming and integrity, with just looking back on some of the big scandal with Pot Ripper, like the UB Absolute stuff, right? Which was a huge blemish, a bad look for poker with the seeing the cards and that. And now, I mean, I want to ask about the Mike Postle situation. Have you caught wind of that? Are you even aware of that? Do you know what that is? Do you have any thoughts on that situation?
Yeah. So actually, look, you probably don't remember this, but I spoke to you about it because I was reading all the tweets, and I'm like, okay, so I don't remember who it is, but like someone took the time to
Ingram probably is.
All right, to go back through all the hands and go through all the math. And so I'm reading the end of the story, which is, if you look at all the hands, it's highly unlikely that you would have folded that hand, that you would have gone all in on that hand.
Yeah, you can look at 2 or 3 hands.
Checked on that hand. So you can make the odd, like if it's me playing, you could say, okay, the guy's just a bad poker player and he does dumb shit. So, which is possible, But right. But so that my understanding of it is, what I look at is there's this big allegation that there's a collusion. Maybe it's someone in a truck, or maybe it's someone somewhere. Maybe look at the Houston Astros, buddy. You would have told me that the Houston Astros are buzzing their players, that it's a fastball when he's standing in the batter's box. I would have told you, no way is that possible. So
whatever happened with that? Did they have to give up their
No, they didn't. I mean, I think it's inconclusive, but my point is, it's a similar story, right? This big allegation with lots of circumstantial evidence about it.
Right.
I think the bigger problem was Full Tilt, actually.
Okay.
Like, to be honest with you, no one probably knows about this Postle situation outside of the really niche poker world. But Full Tilt, where all the money was gone, and there's this massive, DOJ indictment of a group of really well-known people. and processors. That gave poker a real black eye, and I think the Scheinbergs did a really good job in cleaning that up.
Yeah, paying those numbers were dormant. That was basically a done deal. Like people, I remember I had not a lot of money on there, but I had friends that had a ton. Jungle Man, for example, or other guys had millions of dollars, and this I remember people are offering and buying on cents on the dollar, like their balances to get money out, because it was years, right? And they actually bought it and paid everyone back what Stars did for Full Tilt. Right. That was pretty sweet.
Listen, I think what you guys need to understand is that people expect the cards to be random, and they expect the money to be paid. The same way that we expect that the Dallas Cowboys quarterback has not made a bet against the Cowboys,
right,
and then throws a bunch of interceptions. We expect for that not to be the case. We expect for the Howard Letterers or the Jesuses or whatever. We expect the top people in their game to be very credible if what we're trying to get is legalized, trustworthy, regulated poker. So that was a black eye. It's been a long time. A lot of the land-based casinos have now made investments in online gaming companies. All the online gaming companies I know today, the Paddy Powers and the Parties and the Poker Stars, and these are all run really tight. And I would trust my money with any of them.
For sure. Absolutely right. And what about that? The guy though, I heard something, and I think actually plays at the Isle, Russ Hamilton, the guy who was like behind this UB and all that. Like I just understand how, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the repercussions that he faced, I just feel like there was not really, I don't even know if he did jail time, and he still just like goes around and does whatever. Are you familiar? Because he was around, I mean, at UB and Absolute, yeah. That was a big, that was around your time when you were there, right? I mean, that was,
yeah, but I didn't, so I didn't know him. I don't remember what happened with him. But I know that he for sure had his comeuppance with Ty Stewart and Jack Effel for sure. Yeah, if I remember correctly, he was banned from the World Series, but I don't know for how many years, and I don't know if he's still banned from the World Series. I don't know.
I think he won the main event, and maybe his banner was covered or something, or maybe I'm wrong on that. But yeah, anyway, listen, all those things, they come to a surface, right? When you do things the wrong way and you're doing things, it really never just goes unnoticed, right? You just find a way. Greed comes in, things happen, and just it doesn't work out. It's not those type of things. Just it's actually crazy though, thinking about Full Tilt and thinking about Russ Hamilton. These are guys that have like a print press, the right place, right time. You're in gaming. You have a major company that's literally minting money, and you're providing a service, and people are enjoying playing all that. And just like it just kind of blows your mind, right? It just must infuriate you so much, and obviously everyone who's involved or been impacted. But it's just kind of like, come on, really? Like you can't.
Look, I mean. Jeff, Martha Stewart went to jail for lying about a $75,000 stock trade, and she was a billionaire at the time. There's a lot of things that are not easy to explain rationally. Your credibility is very important because you want to be invited to a home game in LA or Houston, and you want the people to invite you because they think you're a good, honest poker player, and that you bring integrity to the game, and that you'll be actually fun to be around. They can learn something from you. And as soon as that reputation is tarnished, you lose all that opportunity. So the guys you mentioned have lost a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That definitely is true, and that's something that I guess people just, for whatever reason, they just don't care, they don't think about it, or they just can't help it. But 2020, people are asking about WSOP. I mean, obviously that's, like you said, covered it. Nothing, Ty and those guys, it's in good hands. They're going to make the best decision.
Absolutely. They want it to happen. Believe me, they'll find a way. I mean, if Ty has to do the tournament in his house, one player at a time, he'll figure it out.
They'll make it go. Who was the first poker celebrity you ever met, or who was like is there any celebrities in poker that you got to meet, or over the years, from not even poker, just some interesting celebrities that you thought were cool, interesting people?
Yeah, I think
a lot. Give us.
I mean, well, certainly, Phil thinks he's a celebrity, so I have to,
give him some love. Yeah,
I love him, by the way. I really do like him a lot.
Great guy.
People have to understand the persona. It's almost like he's a professional wrestler that in the real world is a dentist. Right. Like he's a good family guy, and he's a really, really smart person. And then he puts on the WWE costume and walks into the room, and I really respect it because I think he does it better than anybody else.
Yeah, he gets into character almost. Like he can like flick a switch and just goes into it, right? And he just lives it and breathes it, and he is a great ambassador for the game, no question about it.
So so I'll give you a celebrity story that's tied to actually a really good story. Guy invited me to a hockey game in Montreal in his box at the time, and that was when he had the idea of the $1 million buy-in tournament and marrying it with the WSOP and One Drop. And so it was his idea, but obviously it needed me and the WSOP to put it together, but it was his idea.
Yeah.
So after the hockey game, we agreed that a few weeks later we would meet, and I was in Vegas with Ty, and Guy was in the Bahamas, and it was the time of the Poker Stars tournament in Nassau.
Yeah.
Guy had this big villa at what's the name of that place? Ocean. Anyways, it's part of the. It's like the super villa part of the Atlantis. Anyway, so he has this massive villa, and he says to me, he texts me or whatever. He says, "Can you guys come to the Bahamas and let's close the deal on WSOP?" So I fly Ty, just me and Ty. Oh, and Scott Wilson. We're all in Vegas. Yeah. So I fly them to Nassau from Vegas. We land. We drive to Guy's villa, and Guy's at the table with René Angelil, Jonathan Duhamel. There's millions of dollars of chips on the table. Sassicaia is probably the premier Italian wine in the world. It's maybe $600-700 a bottle. That's for the people watching. That's just for the rail. The rails get rails from Sassicaia. Yeah. And I had to say, I'm saying to myself, this is pretty awesome. I mean, first of all, René Angelil was a really good friend of mine. I did the eulogies memorial service, Celine Dion's husband. So, he's a famous poker player. Obviously we've all run into the Afflecks and the Toby Maguires. These guys they really love poker. I think it's their relief. And I know we play a lot with those guys, and Phil Locke plays with them, and Antonio and Pasha, obviously, those guys. Yeah. So sooner or later you come across, almost everybody, whether it's Gabe Kaplan I think they just don't want to be bothered. Don Cheadle just wants to play poker, and they seek this sort of escape from their celebrity life unless they're playing in a celebrity poker game. Right. So, I've gotten to see a lot of really interesting people that when you get to talk to them at a poker table, it's a much different experience. I played poker with Bill Clinton. These are the kinds of things like in a tournament that you can't make that you can't make that happen elsewhere.
Right, and that's a good point. I think you said these guys, this is like their pastime. This is where they want to relax and not get bombarded, and it's just kind of, it's fun. And I think you sort of realize that poker is just one of those things that you can really equal the playing field, and celebrity athletes, poker pros, like anyone can get on there, and you do a charity tournament and there's all ins, and there's a mixture of skill and luck. It's just fun, right? It's a fun way to sort of engage with all different types of people. Let's see here. Is it so let's see. So I want to know, what is being on the board the Cirque du Soleil? What does that entail? What is that daily like, or what being on that? Let's take before COVID-19 and just in general, like what would be your day to day with doing stuff?
Right. So when it's not COVID-19, there's no day to day. You basically you are the chairman of the board that's in charge of the proper governance and running of the company. You will approve the hiring and firing of the CEO, maybe the CFO. You will approve and help with the strategy, whether you're buying companies or selling assets, all of the strategy of whether you're going to go public or borrow money or take on a strategic partner or strategic investor. So these are all things that come to the board. The board, the chairman, as I see it, and I've been doing this for a long time in a number of companies, I see myself as sort of, I'm like the air traffic controller of the company, meaning I want to make sure that all the planes are taking off and leaving on time, and all the people are equally in the know about what's going on. So board members want to be communicated with. So I just want to make sure that the board members know what's going on in the company. The CEO is communicating with them. It's not an operational role. You're not running the company, but you have a lot of say about the strategy and the vision because you're hiring the CEO. So when you're interviewing the CEO and the board is interviewing them, then they want to know, okay, what are we going to do to produce the most value for shareholders? And that's how we end up hiring and firing CEOs, and that's how we end up buying or selling assets, and that's kind of a role that I enjoy very much. I'm the chairman of Invest in Canada. It's a government organization that the Prime Minister established 2 years ago. So we're in charge of all foreign investment into Canada, many, many tens of billions of dollars. So if Mitsubishi, which they're doing, is opening a plant in Canada, which they're doing, we may be competing against Iowa. And so, trying to bring the incentives together. We have a CEO and a full team, but as the chairman, I make sure that the organization is run properly, that the goals and the milestones are approved by us, and that there's accountability for hitting or missing those objectives.
And is that something that so Guy, obviously being a close friend of yours, and you came on, was that something did that come about kind of spur of the moment, or was that sort of like always like something you wanted to do, / maybe you and Guy, did he say, hey, like, would you be interested down the line, or did it just kind of come up?
No, it came up because Guy was the seller and I'm the chairman of the buyer.
Okay. And how is it, out of all the places you've worked or been a part of or had a major role, CEO or a big title, which do you think was the most impactful in your career, where you maybe learned the most or had the biggest shake up in your life? Like, it was just kind of like you really felt like it was a powerful experience and you learned a lot, gained a lot. Is there anyone that stands out to you as like a unique experience?
Yeah, look, it has to be Party, because I dealt with really big highs and really big lows and really hard decisions, big financial decisions, big DOJ decisions, big board decisions.
Yeah.
And yeah, I won't lie, it was really hard, emotionally and personally. It was very, very difficult. And but I learned a lot about myself. I'm just a guy who, I get out of bed every day and I go. And you don't want to be hit in the head. If you're boxing, you don't want to be hit in the head, all day long. But sometimes you just are being hit in the head all day long. And what I've learned the most, you asked me before, and I told you that measuring the potential most reasonable outcome that you want from a venture, that's probably equally important to being surrounded by the right people. What screws up businesses and deals is the wrong people in the wrong positions. So I can tell you that, I had a CFO at Party named Martin Weigold, and he was the best partner that I could ever have dreamed of. I had Craig Abrams and Ty Stewart and Robert Antical at Caesars. I had, Joel Leonoff and Rory Olson and Doug Lewin, and I had Gary Loveman at Caesars. I've had the best teammates. Like, I'm always playing on the best team, basically.
Right. Which is that's fortunate and nice, but it's also that's you orchestrating your situations, people and you relationships, and you try to, you find your way to go to those places, right? I mean,
some of it's luck, some of it's judgment.
Right. What's the question here? What's the happiest moment in your life? Do you have one of those? Can you narrow that down? I mean, you got family, you got kids, marriage. Like, is there anything that's like a euphoria moment? Maybe not even, just take those aside, because those are like obvious. That's like,
so those are obvious. I would say that it happened in so all family aside, right? Yep. And all money aside. Okay, so that's two big things aside. But so I got a call in April of 2019. I was on my way from a board meeting of Invest in Canada in Ottawa to the train station, take a train back to Montreal, and I get a call, and it's the Governor General's Office of Canada, which is like, like the Queen calling you. So anyway, so as this Mitch Garber, I said, yeah, and I was advised that I was being awarded the Order of Canada, which is the highest civilian honor in Canada. And so on July 1st,
the Order of Canada?
The Order of Canada.
Okay.
It's like your Presidential Medal of Freedom, which was awesome until they started giving it to, like, I don't know, Rush Limbaugh, and it's like just anyone who showed up. But
all right. So 1 year ago, this is that you got presented with.
Not even. No, it was. It was 1 year ago. Yeah. So Canada Day was the day that it was announced. And
wow.
Yeah, it's the biggest honor in Canada. Like Gretzky has it, and all these great people. So that was the biggest thrill of my life.
And that was based on that's like an overall, they take a snapshot of just like things you're doing, or is there like a specific, was it because of something in particular? I don't know how that works. Or they just sort of,
you can't apply for it. You can't know the process for it. And, but they do tell you what it's for, because they write a big beautiful thing about you. And so, yeah, I was a combination of business and philanthropic contribution to Canadian society.
Very cool. I knew
it is cool.
I didn't know that specifically, or that I didn't realize that was an award. I hadn't heard that term. I knew you have won some philanthropic awards and been recognized for. So that's very cool. That's nice. That's nice. You can't really. That's one of those money or family. Just that's okay. That qualifies. That is a very unique, special.
Thank you, yeah.
So congratulations on that. All right, we got to take a couple more, Mitch. I know you got a ton going on. Obviously, a very busy time. Many businesses you're involved with, and this is definitely it's an emergency of such, with just time sensitive things and people's lives and livelihoods on the line. A lot of decisions to make. So, I know how busy you are. Is there anything that you mentioned? I guess mentors already, but just in terms of at a time, let's just take when you were really getting going back in the day, was there anyone you could say that sort of gave you a piece of advice or put you in the right direction? Let's say very early on in your career, anyone that you could help?
So, there's probably a few things. I think, first of all, my father dropped out of school in the 8th grade, and my mom went to teachers college, and my parents valued education for my sister and I over everything else. And she got an MBA and I went to law school. So, my parents hadn't had the opportunity to do that. And so there is no advice that I got that ended up producing a greater result than getting, 2 degrees, getting that law degree, and putting that to good use. That was the best advice. My godfather hired me in his firm and allowed me to. He had done a few files in gaming for Carnival Cruise Lines, and he allowed me. I saw an opportunity to build a business plan, go to Atlantic City, meet with all the collection managers, and build a gaming business. He gave me that platform and that opportunity. So those are like 2 really meaningful moments. Gary Loveman at Caesars, and David Bonderman and Mark Rowan, who said, go ahead and buy this company that you can't win anything from and sells virtual cocktails on Facebook. Yeah, go ahead and do that. And that turned obviously to be really, really well, really good advice.
Right.
So I've had a few really good, my wife has given me a lot of really great advice. One of the transactions that I did, which started my entire sort of business career on the right path, was that I wasn't going to go to a cocktail that she thought I should go to. And at the last minute, she kind of kicked me out of the house and said, go, you never know what's going to happen. The guy ends up buying the company I was the CEO of at the time that was running out of cash. And then that turned into everything that I have today. So, yeah.
You mentioned this at the beginning about CEO of Optimal Payments, the owner of NetTeller. But so this was PaySafe or now PaySafe?
Now, yeah.
So I mean that was so you were CEO of that company, and that was how big of a deal was that? I mean that sold, like, that was when you actually left there. What was it called then?
It was when I left. It was probably worth $1.5 billion. It sold for 3.9 or so billion to Blackstone and CVC, and now it's probably worth 10, 12 billion. Really, I started it with 2 guys, Joel Leonoff and Rory Olson, and built it to what Optimal became. So maybe that's the 1.5. But Joel Leonoff, he took it when it was broken into little pieces after UIGEA, totally without my involvement. And he bought it for nothing, and he had a vision. He built it into this. He bought NetTeller. He did all these deals, and he just did an amazing job. He's a brilliant. He moves like a turtle, and he thinks like Einstein. So
there you go.
Weird combo.
Someone asked about you mentioned the name Ruth. I've heard this name tossed around a lot. They're asking the owner, the creator of the Party Poker website. This was in 2000. You came on in 2000. How did they approach you? How did you get in touch and get into Party at this time? Like, why was that a segue for you to come into this? How did she get hold of you, or how did they approach you?
I think I was at a Vegas conference in 2005, 2005. And I think a friend of mine called one of the founders and said, I got the perfect CEO for you. This guy will be an awesome CEO if you're looking to change CEOs, which they were looking to do. Maybe he knew that. I don't remember.
Right.
And I don't even remember if I had met Ruth before or not. But and
she still,
they were being advised by Deutsche Bank at the time. So Deutsche Bank interviewed me, and then the board interviewed me, and it was a long process before I ended up getting the job.
And how can you give us a little? Because I mean, she's one of those names in poker that I don't know much about. I've heard Michael Seabor, and I was around that. I believe. Did you work with him?
Around there?
Yeah.
She's a very, very smart entrepreneurial woman. She was at the time married to a man named Russ DeLeon. She started the business. She was really the architect of the business, but he was the architect of the professionalization of it to make it into a company that could be public. So as a team, they were very, very strong. They're no longer married. And once it became public, it was a monster. And then, the dominoes started to fall when the UIGEA passed. And that's when it became a really difficult time.
Okay. And before we close, I just want to ask one more thing about the current landscape of online poker. What is your impression of, you saw like Amaya, the sale of PokerStars? They seem to be going more into gaming. A lot of guys have left, gone to Party Poker. Daniel Negreanu, obviously the face of PokerStars for a decade or so, has left. Myself, Jamie Staples, Kevin Martin, a lot of the streamers have gone and moved to Party Poker, and there's been a shift. Do you have any?
What's the reason? Let me ask you. Turn the table on you. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, well, again, I had a good time. PokerStars does a lot of things well. They have great software. That they have a lot of good things going there, but it just seems the direction of the company kind of has shifted, less into poker, more about gaming, sports, sort of fun games, making it different a little bit, like not so much the actual poker side. Rob Young, who actually it's a funny story. I met him sort of like the sliding doors thing. I actually lost one of the biggest pots of my life, January of last year. Aces to kings, all in pre-flop. I was playing on a boat in the Bahamas, private game. Bill was with me, playing a couple other guys I had brought, and then he made quad kings. He only runs it one time, so he wouldn't run it twice. And it was a massive pot, big 6-figure pot, and he hit quad kings. I got to then play the next day. We played 10 hours plus, got to talk. He was interested in Twitch. We had meetings. Then he flew to Miami, and we sort of just closed it because I was re-signing with PokerStars. It's kind of funny like that too. Sometimes you think about these type of deals or things, they really do a lot of times happen sort of unique or crazy little effect of something that goes, because this wasn't like I was talking to Rob, premeditating, going to move over to Party. I didn't even have his phone number. And this was like, I was there in Bahamas in January of last year, renegotiating, signing at the end of January for PokerStars. And then this kind of came up. So this was not like a premeditated deal, and it kind of just shifted, but it was so apparent. I knew who Rob was, and I knew he's so passionate about poker. Party Poker really is about poker, making it for the players, giving extra incentives to them, doing unique things, and just focusing on tournaments. So really long-winded answer is it feels like they're focused on poker, and that they want to do things for specifically poker. So it's in the GVC, right? GVC has sports betting, they have gaming, there's party gaming, there's other stuff, but the actual poker side and Party Poker is very focused and seems to have the right what they're trying to do. For me, it aligns with what I want and just kind of the right situation.
Yeah, so I'll give you a kind of roundabout answer. When I was at Party, there was poker, and then there was casino games on the side. Okay. Nothing made money other than the poker. You had a bingo and you had a bit of casino games, and it was okay. And 888 has remained a relatively small company because it was focused on casino games and it wasn't focused on poker at a time when poker was huge. Then when everyone turned off, they're focused on casino games, but PokerStars is taking all the liquidity, so they never became a huge company.
Right.
Today, you have poker, social games, casino games, esports, fantasy, and I think that if you're an analyst, you need to look really hard at, well, who's making the cash flow? Who's making the profit from here? Forget what you like. So Playtika is making $700 million a year of EBITDA, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 10-year-old company. It's one half the age of 888, and 888 never made the pivot to social games. Now you have poker, which for the foreseeable future, you don't have the open US market, right? So to get those numbers, the old party poker numbers, is really, really hard. So there's only room for a few players to. So I think PokerStars is going to always focus on poker, but they may be smart in branching out. Esports. If I own Call of Duty, which Bobby Kotick does at Activision, that's the part of esports that I like. I don't love the business outside of that. Daily sports fantasy. It's so far not a very profitable business. It's a cool business, but so far not a super profitable business. So I would look where the profit is, and diversification away from poker is not a dumb idea, especially when you look at the social mobile games business that's become really successful for the King.coms and Playtikas. Right.
Yeah, it's that's fair. And do you have what about just Bazoff and David Bazoff, or if I'm pronouncing it wrong, he was a CEO of that to me was kind of a weird deal. Like he sort of came in and stepped out, and it was sort of like some inside stuff. Do you have any insight onto that situation? Just kind of what happened there?
Yeah, so he's a really good friend of mine, and I really like him a lot. I think he's a very smart businessman.
Right.
Certainly, he pulled off one of the greatest acquisitions of all time. A $500 million company bought a $5 billion company. It's crazy that he got Blackstone and well, mostly Blackstone to do that deal. So he did an awesome deal. He got caught up in insider trading allegations that forced him to leave the company. Then he was not acquitted. They dropped all of the charges of insider trading here in Quebec. So he ended up out of the company. He's got a ton of money. He's a philanthropic guy. I think he's very, very smart. And like I said, when you're in business, sort of the way I am, anytime someone can buy a $5 billion company when they're a $500 million company, it's pretty awesome that you could and do it with Blackstone. It's not like they just found money on the street. That's hard money. So yeah, I take my hat off to what he accomplished there.
Very cool. And what about Party Poker? Do you have any thoughts on their business and the current state? Obviously, that's who I'm sponsored by now. Rob Young and I work very closely. Do you know Rob? Do you know any of the management there? Do you have any interaction or idea of the company and how you're really just removed from the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, super fond memories. I just invested in the former CFO has built the biggest underground wine cellar in the Rock of Gibraltar, in the tunnels of the Rock of Gibraltar. We got like a lifetime lease to build out the tunnels into the biggest multi-million bottle wine cellar. So I'm an investor in it. It's going to be like this offshore tax-free wine cellar for wine collectors and yachts.
That was a former CEO of Party Poker as well?
CFO, Martin Weigold is his name. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Very cool.
So yeah. I still have some connections and roots with Gibraltar.
Okay. Well, yeah, man, it's great to catch up. I could talk forever. I think it's super interesting. I think, I love poker. I've been in poker doing a little differently on this playing side. I've definitely got some, business side. I mentioned about State Kings and other things. I've kind of found, doing some of the other side of the stuff. It's an interesting space. I think gaming, it's a bit tricky too at times, because it's like you're always talking about, it's not gray area, but you people are gambling, if you will, or they're playing money. It's got some negative connotations. How would you just to finish on and people in gaming and say where people are playing or risking money, how do you sort of balance that and say, or how would you answer to people that say, oh, it's like bad, or people are spending and losing money and that type of thing? How would you sort of position that?
Listen, it's a super complicated question, except that, I was in the gaming industry for entertainment. Okay. And I believe that the vast majority of people that come to Las Vegas are using entertainment dollars of theirs to entertain themselves. Okay?
Right.
Now they're using food dollars, day club dollars, nightclub, retail, and gaming dollars. I believe that the companies really try to identify problem gamblers. I believe that's the case online with the credible operators as well.
Yeah.
And there will be this, minority of people that will gamble over their heads, not with their heads, and that will end up in financial trouble.
Right.
And there will be people who go to the liquor store and I buy a bottle of vodka and it lasts me a month and a half, and they buy a bottle of vodka and it lasts them a day and a half.
3 hours.
And they end up losing their home and losing their family from alcoholism. And alcoholism is serious. And I'll give money to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll give money to the responsible gaming organizations. So I really believe in moderation. I believe in I believe in regulation. It's important. I believe in good, honest gaming where the company is not trying to bankrupt its customer. It's trying to entertain its customer so that the customer will want to come back again another time. Not so that the customer will lose everything and then you'll never see the customer again and the customer has a bad experience. Vegas makes itself on return customers, and I would say that Party Poker makes itself on return customers as well.
Right. No, okay. That's exactly what's well said. That's the same thing. I stream poker. I talk about poker. I think poker is great. It's not everything. It's also important to exactly show people and talk to people and say, look, like I do this. I also have other forms of revenue. I'm sponsored. I have other things. And it's like, I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm not telling you to become a professional poker player. I'm not telling you to risk what you can't risk. But exactly, like same thing as you went to AC and busted your roll and locked your keys in your car. And, you could look at that and say, oh, that's like bad. But really, is it? Not necessarily, because you're taking an experience, you're doing something and you're becoming better from it. It's not like you lost your life savings and it's a negative thing. Same thing with me. I was 18 and, blew what I had or whatever. But it's like these are life experiences. These are and this is kind of a weird way of looking at it, but I'm just saying it's not you can't control the bottom line is that you could talk about vices, adult entertainment, alcoholism, a good example, right? You can't control our people have addictive personalities and they're going to find a way to do something that's negative, right? That's not going to be
mental health is serious. So the people who become addicted to gambling or addicted to alcohol don't want to be addicted to these things and don't want to lose their families. So we have to take mental health really seriously, but at the same time, we live in a society that does sell cigarettes. It seems like a dumb thing to sell, but it sells cigarettes and it sells alcohol and it sells gaming. I think that if the consumer, if the customer, understands the product that the customer is buying, and if we're sensitive to mental health issues and alcoholism, bartenders are not supposed to be psychologists, but they're certainly not supposed to serve people that they think are shouldn't be served another drink. And so it's a bit of a slippery slope, and it is a minority of people certainly that have gambling addiction and gambling problem, but it's by no means not a problem. Of course, it's a problem.
Right. For sure. No, I like that. Obviously, that's something you I'm sure have dealt with and talk about, and this is something that's a big part of the industry. Is like you said, you're looking overall. You want people to. It's an entertainment. You want people to come back. You want people to have a good time, have an experience, and not go over their heads. And you can only.
So can I give you another example?
Yeah.
Okay. That people don't talk about. So online shopping has become a big problem for some people who can't help themselves but to buy everything they want to buy and max their credit cards. All right. Now, we shouldn't legislate online shopping, but there is a mental health issue related to online shopping and the instant gratification, the adrenaline gratification of having a little bit of credit left on your card and be able to get that thing, delivered to you tomorrow. But I'm a big fan of Amazon and I'm a big fan of online shopping, and I think it's an amazing technological advancement in our society. So there's a lot of things that people can do to extreme, and we just have to be conscious of it and not take advantage of people.
I couldn't agree more. Mitch, I said that was our last one. I forgot. I had a couple questions from my wife, Amelia.
Yeah, well, those are more important.
Yeah, I sort of covered some of this, but she was asking, how do you balance time with life and work? Do you have a set time hours? I mean, I've like what is your sort of overall? How would you address that? Work, life, and balance. It's a little different now too. You've done so much. Let's take in the heart of your career. Like what was like some tricks or things? I love how you said you would get on that flight, you would get home, like those type of things. Like that to me is that shows a lot, or that's like, wow, yeah, that does make a big difference. Get back so you're there in the morning instead of night. But give me like a little bit about how would you say you balance that?
Okay, so I think the balance, it comes from being honest with yourself. So it is extremely easy. I don't care what business you're in. It could be the poker business, or it could be Cirque du Soleil. You could go to every meeting, and you could go to every dinner, and you could go on every business trip, and you could take every meeting. And the balance comes from the discipline of choosing what is most important to do. Do you need to be at that dinner? Because it would be better to be at home. Okay. And then you have people who don't want to be at home. That's a different story. But I want to be home and you want to be home. So I think the balance comes from prioritization, because work is a priority from 8 in the morning until 6, 7 p.m. On a Wednesday. You're not going to be home. In your business, maybe you can be home, but in mine, you're not going to be home. So let's make sure that if you're going to extend that, either, you know, past 6:30, 7 o'clock for a dinner, or a trip, that it's really necessary. That's the balance. And that the weekend is not spent working. Now, like I said, I'm 55. So I got my first BlackBerry in 91. Changed my life, right? The ability to look at your phone and answer and be around your family, or put the phone away, which is obviously a better result, but sometimes that's not possible. So using the technology to be home more often and prioritizing the demands on your time, those are the metrics. Why am I going to this dinner? Do they need me? Am I the 8th person at the dinner? Does it have to be a dinner? Can we do a call? And these are the things that people get wrong. I got it wrong a lot, but I'm saying, I now understand it really well. And sometimes it takes balls to say, no, I'm not going, because you're not in a position to say no. You're trying to make it and climb the ladder. So anytime anyone asks you, go, because you don't want to miss anything. It's like real FOMO. It's like, FOMO, it's like money, career advancement FOMO. It's like not bullshit FOMO. It's the real thing.
Right. So
that's the balance, figuring out the true prioritization and trying to manage the FOMO and the career advancement over family. And there's no better advice than that.
Awesome. What do you like to receive as a gift? Like I just, in terms of, it's kind of a strange question. Just like, if birthdays or something, like what's something that's kind of cool for you to get as like someone who, cause it's hard, right? You're a successful businessman. No one's going to get you something that you don't want, right? Like, it just, for example, or family, what's like a thing that's kind of cool for like a trinket or something that you just like think it's like thoughtful, but is what's like something that would mean something to you?
Yeah. So a friend of mine bought me these trackers you put in your golf club that like it tracks on your phone the trajectory of your ball, how many strokes you've taken, like things I would never think of, like cool stuff like that.
Yeah,
I bought this guy a golf club that I saw on TV. Like I got totally sold by by the commercial that this hybrid club was going to be like the be all end all. If someone sent me a picture of me and them, I would think that would be really cool. So my friend Robert from Playtika, he sent me a glass encased, like a lucite encased picture of he and I taken sitting on a couch. Someone had taken a picture of us from high up, and it was an amazing picture. It sits on my desk today. That's fun.
The pictures are like the hard cover. Like nowadays, it's all Instagram or Facebook or whatever. You just have like these things, but like I getting like a hard copy of a picture, especially if it's like framed, or really cool. That is cool, because those are rare these days. You don't really see that kind of stuff.
Once in a while, someone sends me a handwritten note. I'm like, oh my god, a handwritten note, right? So I haven't written one, but I get handwritten notes, and that's
old school. Yeah, that's very cool. All right, last question, Mitch. I promise. Well, I think I promise. What do you seek? What do you do to seek your personal development, to be better every day as a human being? What are things you do sort of for personal development?
Yeah, I think you start to be, at this point in my career or my life, I'm more kind of concerned with what my kids think of me and what they think of themselves and what role I played or could play in it. Then I'm, do I try to, read about things that I'm interested in? Yeah. I mean, do I try to use my platform to communicate social messages that I think I can be helpful in communicating? That makes me grow. If I can help the government here communicate to young people to stop congregating, like that makes me feel really good. That's not the financial feel good. That's like, wow, you're producing a real impactful result from the things that you were able to succeed at in your life, which society says make you successful, okay, which is money, status, title, and all that stuff, okay, and I do value those things, but you're able to take it and use it for other things, and that's what I want to do, to be able to give good advice to my kids, good advice to people, that my wife thinks I'm a good husband. Those are the kinds of things that, that are going to make me grow today. I don't need to do another M&A transaction, and I don't need to get another chairmanship of another company. It's nice to be considered. I don't need another award. They're nice to get. But I just think that if I can use all those things and have some small positive impact, so I'm raising a lot of money philanthropically, and I know that the reason that they ask me to chair these fundraisers is because they think that my platform or my persona here is going to help raise more money. And since we all know that, then I'll go to the factory of Bombardier or Deloitte in Montreal, and I'll speak to all the factory workers about whether they could give $2 off their paycheck and make them feel good about giving even $2, because that's what true philanthropy is. It's giving what you can afford to give. So I think I'm growing by trying to take the material success, okay, and use it to do better things, because it doesn't feel good to drive the Ferrari and not do something meaningful. It does feel good to drive it and do something meaningful. So right. I don't need to be hypocritical and say I'm not selling all my assets and living a different life. I just want to be able to live a little bit more productive life.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's I love that. Love to end on a high note, talking, getting some wifey questions in. She says hi.
I love her. I love her. She's one of the greatest, nicest, most balanced people that I know, and I really, really respect her a lot.
Thank you. Anne Marie as well. You did very well. You're very lucky. And Dylan and Ryan are great kids, and say hello, please, to them for us. And yeah, Mitch, on the last note here, we're just gonna roll on. I'm gonna take this tweet. Looks like over like 80 something questions, pretty strong, considering you're not, you're a guest. A lot of guests are in the poker world specifically are players. You are, very unique perspective on the industry, and appreciate the time. So let's copy this. And Mitch, you tell me when someone's going to win a 55 ticket from none other than Party Poker, your roots. Someone's going to get a ticket today. So you just tell me when to roll.
All right, go. Let's do it.
We're rolling it. There it is. Someone is getting a $55 Party Poker ticket. There it is. It's a long name, a lot of numbers. We're going to message them on the side. They're going to win. Congrats on the $55 ticket. And Mitch, I hope we'll see you soon, but the reality is it may not be a while in person, but we go.
Okay, we'll FaceTime each other.
Yeah, a little poker face game or something.
Let's do it.
So cheers, man. Mitch Garber, everyone. Thank you so much, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, brother.